sort of accustomed to maybe something that you're different accustomed to. Well, when I have a program, I like to sit with devotees. I like to do just that, sit and talk, and try to slight deviation. Do you know what Bitcoin is? This might sound strange. You know what Bitcoin is? Bitcoin is a digital currency, and you have to mine it. There's only 21 million coins available, and it's this whole concept of digital money. So the more that are mined out, the harder it gets to get the remaining ones. The remaining coins will be worth millions, if not billions of dollars for the last surviving Bitcoin when they finally get it out of the thing. It's a concept, but it's gaining ground in the digital world, digital money, just like paper money. Remember? Plastic money, credit cards. What is money? It's simply a conception. And now it's moving digitally. All right, so I didn't come here to talk about that. So what we want to try to do is mine from the ocean of Krishna consciousness something of significant value. Not just same old, not just Guru Maharaj said, Prabhupada said, because if the things are not tied together, it's like putting on a wedding dress that didn't get stitched. What happens? Well, everything just falls apart. You take one step and poof, it falls apart. So I start with a rather bold premise. That what we know is the Western Hare Krishna movement. This can be reduced to no more than sand in another 50 years. And I say this based on a very evident fact that conceptually they're lost in the jungle again. And I mean totally lost. And it begins with the proper conception of guru. And it involves many deviations that happened over the past that most of people who are maybe, say, only in the movement, say, 20 years, don't know anything about. If you weren't here before Prabhupada left, you cannot identify what the deviations might be. And unless you're on the outside, you really can't see them at all. And the state of affairs now that some of the most troubling things, they're symptoms. Some of the biggest debates in the Western Hare Krishna movement concern such trivial issues that if they had gone on the right path these last 20 and 30 years, these would not be any consideration. They would be what they are from the outside. They are jokes. And some of them involve the women, some of them involve homosexuals. These are the hot topics of debate. Women gurus, no women gurus. Women who dominated the debate. Can you imagine Krishnamurti clamoring, never mind Govinda Maharaj, I will be guru. Can you imagine Śrīla Purī Mahārāja's sister, one of these people coming and saying, I'm the bloodline, you know. It's like, would it ever happen? You know, call me prabhu. You ladies, you look intelligent, think about it. Why would you want to be called? You walk into the assembly of Vaiṣṇavas and you say, call me master, please. Prabhu means master. Actually, it means God. Call me God. Mataji isn't enough. It's like, it's enough for Pishima. It's enough for Krishnamurti. And it's been enough for millions of Vaishnavas since this all began. Oh, sorry, Los Angeles, New York, Western ideology, Judaism, Christianity. These things have entered so deep into Krishna consciousness, it's amazing. Some branches of devotees think Lord Brahma was Jesus. On it goes. The Ritviks build bigger temples than ISKCON. They're on the race, you know. First we see their designs and numbers, and after the Māyāpura temple is built, the Adbhūta Mandira, they're going to Adbhūta it by 10 feet. What they've missed is the Adbhūta. You heard of this? The Adbhūta Mandira? You must have heard of it at least in passing, right? There's some controversy about it. It's like, where's the Rock of Gibraltar? It's in Gibraltar. It's on the edge of the Mediterranean. It's on the northern side. It was known as the Pillar of Hercules in the ancient world. It's the Rock of Gibraltar. To try to say that that big rock in Manhattan is the Rock of Gibraltar just isn't going to work in history. To say that another rock somewhere in Spain is the Rock of Gibraltar, even if it's 10 times as big as the Rock of Gibraltar, it's not the big Rock of Gibraltar. The Adbhūta Mandira is sitting on top of Yoga-Pī. That's where it is. And when Bhaktivinoda saw it, he was in Navadvip. He was on the northern end of Navadvip in the Rani, what's it called? Rani something Dharmshala. Rani something Dharmshala. And when he looked across the river at the Ganges, he had this vision. If you go there today, Prabhupada's ISKCON is over here. It is not in line of the vision. But when people are over here in Godram, on Bhaktivinoda's roof, straight off the roof you can see, all that is built up very big of ISKCON. And I myself have stood on that roof and said, Bhaktivinoda had a vision, and point towards the development of ISKCON, which actually blocks the vision of Yoga-Pī from Ṭhākura's house. But he didn't have that house till 5 years after he located the birth site of Lord Chaitanya. So he was on the other side of the river, and when you look across, all our development, and new Māyāpura and different disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, that's all over here. It's not in that line. So he saw this vision 2 weeks later, and he writes this in a letter to his son. He explains. In the first vision, one son and a servant was there. He and the son saw the vision, the servant didn't. The household servant who was on the roof didn't see it. It's very clear. It's in the letters by Bhaktivinoda to the Lali Prashad, where he's explaining his whole life story, what happened. Then 2 weeks later, he comes. Where is he living? He's living in Kṛṣṇa. 2 weeks later, he comes back to the same place. Camps is here. He and, I forget who, take a boat and cross the river and start walking in the direction of where they had this vision. Like, do you see what I see? And the son goes, yes, it's a temple. And the servant goes, what are you looking at? It was a vision. And Bhaktivinoda writes about it. And he says his son saw it, but not his servant. So the next week he returns, so let's go see what's over there in that vision. He gets about 50 meters from Yoga-Pī, and he has the vision again. This time we're talking zoom lens up close. He envisions the Adbhūta Mandira, which is on the first side of Lord Chaitanya. It's not somewhere down the road, a quarter kilometer or even 100 meters. 100 meters down the road, that's Advaita Bhavan, or that's Śrīvāsanga. They're rediscovering the eternal Navadvip, and that's the house of Jagannath Mishra. Then there's a prediction that comes with this in Bhaktivinoda's writings, that from the Adbhūta Mandira, it's called the Adbhūta Mandira, the Kṛṣṇa consciousness, the Sankirtan movement, the holy name of Kṛṣṇa will spread all over the world. The prediction is not that Kṛṣṇa consciousness will spread all over the world, and 30 years after the ācārya, or 39 years after the ācārya who did it, then we'll build the Adbhūta Mandira 1.5 kilometers away from Yoga-Pī. And this will be what? There's no such prediction. So you have to start putting things in perspective. Way back in history, if the present modern predominated English Hare Krishna movement is to stay on course, because it's already so far off course, at the time you have grandchildren and gray hair, you try to remember this day. You will be fighting for utter survival, and spiritually, anything goes, and in India it will be 90% Hinduism, because you're 85% Hinduism now. Not Gaudiya-saṁpradāya. Gaudiya-saṁpradāya is based on the conception of reality. And we follow that. It involves every little piece of what you touch, your japa beads, your neck beads, your deity worship, everything. And none of these things are in proper focus going forward. And it gets worse as we go, worse as we go. Until you have senior leaders like so-and-so complaining about movements that have sprung up inside our movement, which hundreds, if not thousands of devotees seem to be led to follow, which couldn't have existed one day in the time of Prabhupada. One day, these individuals in the movements are so far off the path I don't think it would have lasted a day. Sometimes these things lasted a month or two, but they got weeded out by His divine grace. And now they're a major spiritual concern. And as regards the Adbhūta Mandira, even when being shown Prabhu's, it's the temple of understanding of the Vedic planetarium is what Prabhupada called it. His guru built the Adbhūta Mandira. He doesn't take it kindly that you're trying to snatch Bhaktisiddhanta's glories and tag them onto Prabhupada's vest coat. He's not happy about that at all. Give credit where credit's due, you see. But, situation, the Adbhūta, we've all seen Yogi Peak probably, right? And Adbhūta means wonderful. And if you stand there and look at that building, it's just like, very much wonderful looking to me about that building. It looks as pretty plain as you can get. It just has a four-sided, tower, and it looks almost like a church. It looks more like a church steeple than a Bengali steeple at all, the Adbhūta Mandira. So Adbhūta has nothing to do with how tall it is, how well the pillars are defined, and whether or not the pizzeria out front in the garden is AC or not. That does not define the Adbhūta Mandira. I say this facetiously because there's going to be a nice Pizza Hut. When you look at the plans online of the Adbhūta Mandira that's under construction, there's a glass triangle in the middle of the courtyard. It looks like the Louvre in Paris. That's the Pizza Hut. In the plan, that's the Pizza Hut. Right? That is indeed wonderful. So, but the point is, what is wonderful can be challenged. Is certainly not that building that Bhaktisiddhanta built. So what is wonderful about this? Why does this mandir have the claim of Adbhūta? Well, when we know that, we'll be at some of the highest stages of devotion. It's the conception, this Adbhūta, the appearance of Mahaprabhu. Even the floor plan is based out of the verses of the Brahma-saṁhitā, the hexagonal triangle of which the divine couple is laid out in the floor plan of that building. And if you get up on Google Earth, which I have, you can see the footprint of the building. And then you can take that and set it inside the Gaudiya Math logo. It's got the same lines running through it, making the foundation, making the hexagonal and the figure. And that is painted on the gate of ISKCON, Māyāpura, in two places, right and left. Make no mistake about it. Prabhupada's movement is the movement of Bhaktisiddhanta. Nobody can stand in front of those things. They've been there for 40 years, beyond, since 76. And there's nobody who can stand in front of those things and tell us why Prabhupada put them there. Maybe 40% probably. Why? The rich part of it, no chance. Why he put them there? And then after that, right or wrong, why he put them there? What does this mean? What are these things? What are these words? What is it? Nobody. Can you imagine? Your guru, who's the guru of the world at the time, pretty much, insists that the logo of Gaudiya Math, it's not in this book, the logo of Gaudiya Math be painted on the gate. Both sides. Ditto. That logo is created by Bhaktisiddhanta. It is also the floor plan of the Yoga Peak temple. No. I'm mixing temples right now. Anyway, there's two temples there, Yoga Peak and one that's a little up the street. Anyway, these things are intrinsically related. Understand? So the Adbhūta is completely gone in the ISKCON conception. And what's happening is, they already put Radha Madhava and Ashtashakis. That is a much lower conception. Number one, a much lower conception than just Mahaprabhu standing with Radha Madhava. That's ultimate theistic conclusion. Kṛṣṇa and the Ashtashakis is not the highest thing that ever happened in Krishna's day. Dancing with 8 gopis is when he abandons millions of gopis and proceeds with the Leela. That's where it intensifies. And at the most intense point of that Leela, that is where Mahaprabhu's conception can be first traced in the Vṛndāvana. It exists eternally, separate, however you can wrap a brain around it. They both exist simultaneously. They are one within the other and overlap, separate, simultaneous, achinti, beta, beta, tattva at the same time. So we can't really get a visual on it or even a mental on it. Neither can it be fully described in words. And even the Bhagavatam covers this topic. It only indicates the way. It's not all that there is. Krishna killed hundreds of demons every day on some days, and there's only like 20 in the whole Bhagavatam. He killed hundreds of them. They're just not mentioned. Anyway, there's much of the proper conception that has been lost along the way, and it has a defining point. And that's first the acceptance of Prabhupada's order. If you have questions on philosophy, means on Siddhanta, on the other, if you have these manner of questions, not management, not GBC, what, based upon what's in my books, if you have further questions, Tamal Krishna Maharaj asks, is there anywhere we can go? And Prabhupada answers unequivocally, if you have such questions, you go to Śrī Dharma. And everybody is there. And the first gathering of everybody at Śrīdhara Mahārāja's feet after Prabhupada's disappearance, the introduction is, Prabhupada told us to come to you after his disappearance. That's the voice of Jaiva Dharma. And everybody's there. I mean, at that time, everybody. People now, some people never heard of Bhagavan, and so many people that have vanished now to the new people. You think a 3-year devotee in India has ever heard of Bhagavan? Well, if there's a lot of rumoring and gossiping, maybe. But he sure wasn't good informed about it. And there's no need, in one sense, so long as the leaders are correcting themselves, or correcting things, but things aren't going in the correct way. Like if this room just filled with Gaudiya Vaishnava sannyasis, and all of a sudden we just started a casual talk, it would go in such a way that the ISKCON sannyasis would just sit there and be numb. Because remember, it's only Prabhupada and it's only Prabhupada's books, and Bhaktisiddhanta and everybody else is just a picture. How much does Bhaktivinoda rule the day in ISKCON? How much? There are controversies galore. The biggest one is the origin of the jīva. Where do we come from, and what is the Gaudiya stance on that? That's it. When you go back to the beginning of the Hare Krishna movement, you must come to Bhaktivinoda. Some people say, let's go to Vishwanath and beyond. Emphasis on beyond. The good Lord, our Lord Krishna, sent Kamala Manjari Bhaktivinoda to restart the Sampradaya. And now, 100 years later, what's to be done is not to pass Bhaktivinoda and try to get Ujjvala Leela Mani and Govinda Leela Amrita and think that you're going to get on track by those books. It ain't going to happen. It isn't going to happen. It has to go back to Bhaktivinoda. Now, I say that because everything that you could... I mean, Bhaktivinoda is incredible. He's the greatest philosopher in the modern times since Jīva Goswami. And anybody who's even laid the books of his out in front of him and just took what it takes to bring this stuff down. He wasn't quoting just somebody else. He was bringing his song books. If all the Vedas are lost, you realize you can become self-realized pure devotee of Krishna just by understanding Bhaktivinoda's songs. Nothing will be lost. No siddhanta of bhakti. So the problem is, Prabhupada's speaking one day, Karma Kanda. Next day he's speaking our Prabhupada, ISKCON's Prabhupada. Next day he's speaking something Sutta Bhakti. In between he spoke something in the middle, relative and absolute. For example, Varṇāśrama. You hear about Varṇāśrama till you're proud up to here. I've been hearing about it my whole life. And devotees, we got to do Varṇāśrama. You don't have to do Varṇāśrama. Let me explain why. You have to do Varṇāśrama to demonstrate to the society how the world should run. But for spiritual advancement, if you put your chips in Varṇāśrama, guess what? You lose. The first book Prabhupada writes after taking sannyas is called In Search of the Ultimate Goal of Life. It begins with Ramananda Samvad and the rejection of Varṇāśrama by Mahaprabhu is inadequate for spiritual advancement. So we need Varṇāśrama. It's how to clothe society. Now they're running around naked. Varṇāśrama is for them. Daiva Varṇāśrama is for us. There's a difference. And within Daiva Varṇāśrama, we come to a platform where rock, stone, male, female, man, woman, sannyas, everybody. It's a transcendental plane, and your caste isn't considered, your gender isn't the consideration. None of those are the consideration. Those are considerations to get the world going. I mean, as like kind of in the corner as the women have been supposedly put by society over time, still look how lusty the men are. You guys come out and go topless around the world, you can forget it. Society will degenerate to its lowest end. You know, women should understand. Men can't resist your beauty. They can't resist the way you walk, the sound of your voice, nothing about you. You are powerful in that way. And therefore, by your own understanding, what do you think? Of course, I'm just pointing and saying, do you think that Krishna would argue for the present state of women's live in the spiritual world? No. But something's wrong. Something's definitely wrong. The way many female Vaishnavis have been treated. The solution isn't to say, yes, you're a guru because you're a woman. We need women gurus. Do you know what you're doing? It's like he's saying, oh, we need more men gurus. Well, there's nobody qualified. But yeah, I know we need more gurus, so we'll make these 3 guys gurus. Oh, you got your little gurus, but you just watered down the whole thing. They don't know. Do you know? And I love Kṛṣṇa Das. He was one of my best friends ever in this time. Kṛṣṇa Das Swami.
Who just passed away.
Yeah, who just left the world. Are you all aware of that at all? Do you know he had no initiation whatsoever from Prabhupada or any bona fide person in this time? Nothing. No initiations whatsoever. Not Harinam, not second, not saying. He took sannyas actually from a picture of Prabhupada. Lived with me after he did that. And then was forced to take sannyas from Jayatira when he was still a household. Now, I guess stickier after that, people started losing their heads. You know what I'm talking about. You know? And it just goes on. Kṛṣṇa Das Swami is the best Hindu I ever met. Best Hindu I ever met. Carrying that danda. But what it means and the mantra that goes along with it, which is the Ragamarg mantra, no entrance. Only the lower platform, the shadow, the general distribution, Namavas. Great soul. If you know his story, it's just absolutely amazing. Prabhupada asked him personally to help the movement. He was a teacher. He tried to, and his family tried to block him, and it was this drama of him running one place in the world, another place in the world, and the family coming after him and trying to drag him back, and him going incognito, and this and that. You know, quite a determined, very, very determined soul. However, in his journey after Prabhupada, he never did initiation from Prabhupada. He never received Gayatri, proper Gayatri conception, sannyas mantra that comes along with that. Nada. And his preaching is just wonderful on that lower leg. It doesn't go. For example, he probably never said once in his career. Remember, I say, I have a lot of love for him, and I was closer to him than most people in this time ever dreamed they could be.
His confession.
Oh, yeah. Never mentioned some of the most important things in regard to the holy name of Kṛṣṇa and our parampara. Do you know Prabhupada only spoke 45 minutes twice about Bhaktisiddhanta? That's it. 45 minutes, and he says the same thing in both days. He spoke for 45 minutes about Bhaktisiddhanta in 1,600 hours of recorded BBT lecture, 45 minutes. Now, a person can get their mark in the society just by telling Prabhupada stories for the whole class. Stories. Without catching the meaning of the stories and bringing it to the right conception. So there were many things, you know, and it was amazing. I was thinking and talking of him at the very time he was disappearing from this world. His topic just came up, and I said to the people I was with, no, you know, Kṛṣṇa Das, it's amazing. And every time try to study what's the qualification of guru comes up in the GBC, somebody points to the fact that he's never been initiated by anybody. And how is he guru? Now we have 1,000 disciples between Mauritius and Rwanda. Best Hindu I ever met. But in a Gaudiya that represents the parampara, he would be a listener, not a speaker. A listener, not a speaker. And that would be the fate of almost everyone. Then there would be those people in ISKCON, they've read all the books. And they are very intelligent, and they tie a lot of things together, but the bottom of the bucket is still missing. Scholarship is not. You cannot see the whole picture with scholarship, because scholarship is an ascending endeavor. You better get out of the sun, feel comfortable wherever. But anyway, I'm saying that that's another very important thing. There are so many important things, and they're in many books. But someone will say, oh, Prabhupada said. Yes, Prabhupada said. He was so, I'll tell you, he was pissed off on that day beyond belief. He wrote what's called the Rūpānuga letter. And if you read it, Prabhupada buries himself along with everybody else, actually. If you read it carefully. But that's a burst of anger. So you want to judge something. Somebody said, no, it's not a burst of anger. How do you prove that? Well, I lay the other 20 letters out in front of you, plus the videos, physically showing the two people together and all the other letters. Now, you tell me which mood dominates. You ever had a quarrel with a husband or a father? You ever quarrel with your father? What's it, hate, love? Hate forever now, right? I mean, you told the old man off one day and now you hate him forever, right? No, this is human business. This happens. And they are godbrothers. Can you imagine, It's like the case, almost like the boy wants to marry the most beautiful girl in town and somebody else gets her hand. And the boy's a little angry. He loves her, but he becomes angry because he didn't, go with him. So if you analyze Prabhupada, he's angry because Śrī Rūpānuga isn't coming to be the president of this time, really. Now, if you put all those tapes and letters out there, Prabhupada, what he's inviting Śrī Rūpānuga to do, you have two choices. Was he sincere or BSing? You know what BS means? It means pulling your nose. Was he being duplicit? Did he mean what he said or not? It's like I invite you, please come and visit us if you're ever down in South India. And then I walk outside and say, I don't really mean that. And tell all the rest of my disciples, those people, if they come to the gate, get rid of them. So is that the kind of man you think Prabhupada was? Two-faced, in your face? Speaking behind you? If they invite scholars right now to study the historical record, they will struggle to see that Prabhupada is a pure devotee from several reasons. And the biggest one will be he criticized. And he had the mace. And it was acknowledged. And it was not the envy. It was the constructive criticism. There's a difference. But when people can't make a difference between relative, absolute, envious construction, criticism, truth, all these things, that's called kanishta. You can't discriminate. When we can't discriminate, proper discrimination, that's kanishta. Madhyams are cursed with the vision of discrimination. This is right, this is wrong. There's truth in this, but the rest of it, that's not what you want. You don't want a bowl of sweet rice with just a pinch of sand in it. Do you? I don't. I want the pure thing. I want the pure thing. I want the pure thing. So there's many things involved. It's like the thing has to fall into like a black hole collapse. Where do we fall back to? Where does this begin? At that time, they don't have any temple. No temple. Bhaktivinoda has no temple. And he's the most prolific writer in Gaudiya Vaishnava history in the modern age. So, I say to the devotees all the time, it's Bhaktivinoda, and your most pressing issue in Siddhanta is the Jīva issue. And now, people aren't allowed to talk. Like if I went under invitation to give a class, let's say one of my friends was the temple president of Kṛṣṇa temple, and I went there to give a class, I'd be primed before I give the class on what topics not to mention. Śrīdhara Mahārāja, anybody in Gaudiya mutter anything, and it's like, why go? Have fun, you guys. Be where you are and you'll be happy. But I don't want to go there. Because you can't get to where you want to go. Just by, you know how many times? One time Prabhupada says, Nectar of Devotion, there are many societies of pure devotees. Beep, 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 as contrast to, there's only one society. He says there are many, like our ISKCON society, and one should join one of them. It's right there in the Nectar of Devotion. How do you explain that to devotees? You can't. The fifth ray of principle evolved, never leave ISKCON. Yeah. What if you woke up one day and found out that Prabhupada left ISKCON? What would you do then? Did he leave Gaudiya Math? And what it was. This is the problem. Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta, and Gaudiya Math. Our Prabhupada, 1965, 1966, this year, that's how many years? That's 30-some years. No, 1916 was Gaudiya Math. Anyway, whatever the numbers are, that's a long time. What was that? What was that Gaudiya Math? What was that? If we say, what was ISKCON? Oh, Krishna's in the womb, you hear all the good talk, Prabhupada said it's my body. Super, super. Now the question, what was Gaudiya Math? It was every bit of that and a bit more. Because it's a fact, Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples weren't the likes of hippies, drug abusers, needle freaks, you name it, homosexuals, transvestites. Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples were of the manner of Śrīla Purī Mahārāja, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja, Jaiva Dharma, and a good string of others, Keshav Maharaj. And it's just like, whoa. He didn't initiate fools, as Prabhupada was said one day when one sannyasi said, Prabhupada, were any of your god brothers not fools? And boom, Prabhupada swung his cane, and it stopped right here at Mr. Hari K. Swami's chest. And then Prabhupada raised it and said, first he said, my guru did not initiate fools. And you cannot even think an ill thought about them. Not even about Yati. Not even about Tirtha. Yati is not a god. Not even about Tirtha. Out of our realm. No, not out of our realm. We stick both fists, both feet, and our big mouth in there and shout for decades. And think there's no reaction? The biggest problem is Vaiṣṇava-aparādha. It's still a cloud. Many people have made it. Many people have suffered from it. The grievousest of offenders are gone. Why did all these people fall down? Because their worship was too opulent? Do you know what a headache that is to have somebody standing in front of you going round and round like this? Even once a year is a headache. Every day? You gotta be kidding. And if you examine why Prabhupada accepted it, and even the whole story of guru-pūjā, you'll find that it's not the quintessential thing that a guru must do with his disciples every day. That's not a quintessential thing. It's the first time it ever happened in the history of the universe, practically. Other than Gurudev has always wished on the altar and offerings and stuff like that. But that function of guru-pūjā was a speciality, and Krishna consciousness had already spread around the world before we ever started one guru-pūjā. So then, question, how important is guru-pūjā? Important, but not quintessential. Where did it come from? Where did we learn it? It comes from Achyutananda, who lived in Śrīla Maharaja's ashram and saw them sing Sri Guru Charana Padma and other songs at different times. And he's the first one, when he leaves Śrīla Maharaja's ashram, when Prabhupada comes back to India, he brings that song, the most cherished song other than Samsara in all of ISKCON. It comes to us on a silver platter from Śrīla Maharaja's ashram. The Prabhupada Kirtan comes to us only from Śrīla Maharaja's ashram. That's where the devotees learn. And how to worship the spiritual master in Prabhupada's own words comes to us from Śrīla Maharaja's ashram. How important is Śrīla Maharaja? You ask, not in a challenging way, like, ha, I know something you don't. Find people that even know what Prabhupada's name is. What is his name? Most people don't even know. You know what his name is? Name. His name is Swami. That's not his title. In Gaudiya Math, you ever hear Swami Śrīdhara? Swami is always first. In our parampara, Swami is always first. There are 108 names for sannyasis. One of those 108 names is Swami. Another one is Goswami, right? Which is kind of redundant. Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Looks a little bit redundant. And Prabhupada writes a letter and explains his name in the 1960s. That actually, I am a Swami, but my name is Swami, and 2 times Swami doesn't look good, he says. So I put Tridandi. In the earliest letterheads or anything you can find of Prabhupada says Tridandi Goswami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So you go to a Gaudiya Math and they say, oh, you're a disciple of Swami Maharaj. And you immediately feel, oh, so indignant they call him Swami Maharaj, like we're saying Guruji, Guruji, and everything. But you ask, oh, is this book by Śrīdhara Mahārāja? They don't go get all twisted up because Śrīdhara is his name. And Swami is his name. And everybody in the whole of Gaudiya Math knows Swami Maharaj is the one who went to America. Swami Maharaj. Now what's his bhakti? Means his bhakti rakshak, his bhakti pramod, his bhakti vedanta, his bhakti siddhanta. He's the bhakti vedanta. Where did that name came from? That's not a name also, that's a title. Where did it come from? Śrīla Maharaj did it. And where did it, why did he do that? Because another godbrother named Saranga Maharaj had given Prabhupada another name, Bhakti Siddhanta Das. Well, what name did Bhakti Siddhanta give Prabhupada? Abhay Charanaravinda. That was his initiated name. Saranga Maharaj changed his name. Prabhupada accepted it proudly. Bhakti Siddhanta Das. On the back of the League of Devotees registration is Prabhupada's signature. Alias AC Bhakti Siddhanta Das Adhikari. Now AC Bhakti Vedanta. This is before he was Swami. He was Bhakti Vedanta in 1943. So the name first was Bhakti Siddhanta Das, and then this kind of set some ripples, because it was observed that Bhakti Siddhanta never gave the name of Bhaktivinoda to anyone. So it was kind of felt like, and this Bhakti Siddhanta, he was no one to mess with, in a sense. He was one of the greatest devotees of Bhakti Siddhanta. He was in the second wave that went to England. Many things of Saranga Goswami, and I think his heritage is Nityananda Vamsa on top of it all. One of the highest lineages in Vaishnavism, Chaitanya Vaishnavism, is the Nityananda Vamsa. This disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta was from that group. And he had magazines, and Prabhupada wrote extensively. He wrote over, I think, 25 articles for Saranga Maharaj's magazine under the name of Abhaicharan Day. Another interesting question. Why in 1936, when Prabhupada writes his Vyasa Puja offering to his guru, the famous poem, Adore, Adore You All the Blessed Day, sweeter than heaven, sweeter than May, that nice poem. And there's an essay that he writes, 1936. You follow me on this? Why does he sign it? Abhaicharan Day. He's been initiated for 3 years. It poses a question. Go look for the answer and you'll understand it. Another little piece, another little piece. Without the past, the present has no meaning, and the future is lost. Now more than ever, this one has to understand its lineage, and it doesn't begin with Prabhupada. If it does, it's called a bastardized sampradaya, and it will be dust in another 50 years. It's already cracking in so many directions you can't see straight. But what's there? Opulence like never before. Like never before, there's money in the flow. People, certainly you go to places that had the people in the past, even LA, how many conscious Mangal Artik attendant devotees are there in that community now? Well, Prabhupada's time there was 350 and they were all his disciples. Now there's whatever it is, and there's only Naikatna, Swavas, a couple of people, there's a handful. Go to the great Juhu, the fort where Prabhupada fought the battles against the Nayars and got the property and all the stuff that went through. Bhima died. One disciple of Prabhupada. What, are we all dead already? No, not dead. I figure there's at least 3,500 live, kicking, squirming Prabhupada disciples all out there look like him and me and worse. They're not doing nothing.
Maharaj, would you like some water?
No, I have some juice. Lemon water, so thank you. So, many things are involved in going to the doctor's office. And that is accepting the fact that we need something and we don't have it. We need something and we don't have it. There's been little things that they'll admittedly say. Deity worship, we used to go to Śrīla Purī Mahārāja all the time. Identify a Shaligram, take it to Śrīla Purī Mahārāja. Different things. But very rarely did they come to Śrīla Purī Mahārāja of any topic of meaning themselves. Just for some external things. But those things they couldn't solve without coming to somebody else. But then they went to people like the Copper Plate Baba. You go back 5-6 years, the GBC and Mass are going to the Copper Plate Baba. And one of my devotees in our mission happened to be in this guy at the time, and he was an assistant to one of the sannyasis who went to see the Copper Plate Baba. And the Copper Plate Baba's name is Achyutananda. No, he's not named Achyutananda. He's in the line of Achyutananda. Of course, they told me Achyutananda is a disciple of Gadadhara Pandit, and he's a bit of an incarnation of sorts of himself, and he's the most able Madhurya Ras Bhakta, the head of the Sankirtan movement after, Mahaprabhu. I mean, we're flashing high credentials here outside of ISKCON. My question is, what are they even doing outside of ISKCON? I'm not supposed to go outside, remember? Why are they going to this guy? Okay, pure gold credentials, the line of Achyutananda, right? But they got the wrong Achyutananda. They got the Achyutananda that Mahaprabhu rejects. And when he rejects him, he pushes him outside the door or something. And this particular person's followers took that as Mahaprabhu saying, start your own sampradaya, you have my blessing. So it's called the Ativāḍīs sampradaya. And they've been predicting the apocalypse, end of the world, the big one's coming, since the time of Mahaprabhu. Bhaktivinoda wrote special essays warning people to avoid them. They didn't die, they're still here. That's the Achyutananda Parampara that the GBC went to ask, what about my zone at the end of the world? What about my zone? About its zones, it never changes. What about my men and money? Men, women, and money. My zone. And of course he said different things, of which none has ever come to pass. And then they moved, but when they were there that day, when the Baba kind of drooled, can you believe it? They were there to take the nectar from some drooling Sahaji's mouth. And I'm going to tell you the ISKCON gurus that were there, because they're in your top 5. That was slimy affair. All those kind of things go on unknown, and leaders seem to make a stand for so long until they either fall down, been fallen, or they die. And there lies the problem. If they don't leave the right thing behind, God bless, but the rest of you don't have a chance. You don't have a chance. And Guru Maharaj, Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja would be the first to tell you this, and after that Prabhupada lived by this time. He left the Gaudiya Math when they only had one court case, one physical fight, no Apasiddhanta. That's it. Come on, one fight, which you leave for. One court case. One court case. Prabhupada left the Gaudiya Math, opened a new ashram, and put Śrīdhara Mahārāja in charge. He rented you have all heard of number 6, Sita-kanta Banerjee Lane, Prabhupada's house. Well, if you go there, number 7 is right next door. And actually, Prabhupada rented them both. One was a single level, one was a 3-story, G+2, we say in India. Very small, narrow, G+2. And he subletted the one level, which had bath facility of, the most, what do you call it, fundamental type. Śrīla Mahārāja says, we Indians aren't big on bathrooms, So we had a little cement bathroom for the brahmacharis, whatever. And for 7 years, with a door that connects from that preaching center to the inside of Prabhupada's house. That was life on a daily basis. Just imagine. What would have transpired? What was life like? Bhishma coming by as a newly initiated disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta, now taking second initiation from Saranga Maharaj, the one who named Prabhupada. You would think, by the hussy about Bhishma, that we would care about who's her guru. Everybody knows Bhishma, don't they? In the history of Prabhupada, Bhishma, the sister? But if you go ask, who's her guru? Nobody knows. How can you? It's like someone saying, oh Maharaj, we really love you so sweet, so this. Rarely do people say I'm sweet. This, and the other. And then I say something about my guru, and we just go, who's that? I mean, you don't think I would feel that? How can you love me, love my dog? How can you love somebody and not be interested even who's their guru or anything about it? How can you be like that? It shows something. You're not awake yet. You're only seeing so far, so far, so far. And if everything was so great, Why all the problems? Why do people keep falling down? We shouldn't be falling down. Why does that happen? There's a deeper cause to everything. Why do people leave? Can you imagine thousands of devotees leaving ISKCON? To me, I'm like, how does this happen? For what? You're kidding me. For that they left? Oh, anyway, yeah. For nothing. For some lower idea of a higher thing is what so many people left for. Thinking they can become rasic or they're entering the path of Raganuga. People enter the path of Raganuga. I don't know if they ever talk about it. From what I've seen. They never hardly ever mention the word unless they see it's you that don't have it right and they put you on the track, who we are. But they're not talking about Raganuga or Rasa. We didn't hear Śrīla Purī Mahārāja, Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja, or anybody sit around talking gopi, lila, rasa, manjari stuff. Nada, nada, nada. In fact, one day Śrīla Purī Mahārāja said, yeah, the conversation came, so this isn't just a he said, but it's one of those he says. And we're all gathered around there. There's been at least 3-4 sannyasis there, maybe 8 to 10 others. Very small room. We're all scrunched in there next to his bed. And the conversation was going in such a way, and it was being said how people have programs and just talk about 10th canto and all this stuff and everything. He's just shaking his head, and then he says, actually, the sannyasis who approach gopī-bhāva without proper qualification, they will become women in there. They take birth as a woman. Like if you're too attached in the wrong way, then you get to be a man. Good luck. Good luck on any choice. Where you stand, go for it. One's not any better than the other. It just depends on where you're standing at the time. So, okay, I spaced out the point.
Being born in a female body.
Yeah. So he says these swamis, and we're thinking of so many swamis we know, we're all just, everyththing's got to be gopi ras. They cry when they chant and stuff. He says they will take birth as not prakrita ras gopis, transcendental gopis, but they will take birth on the opposite side in this material world, in a female body, because of their meditation on gopis. But they're not actually meditating on gopis. They're meditating on form, and it's feminine, and that's what they get. So then somebody piped up and said, oh, Guru Maharaj, maybe that explains why there's so many sincere Vaiṣṇavīs in the planet. And everybody laughed. So you never heard these topics there. They were the most rare. Once there was a man who was spreading Krishna consciousness, so-called, all over the world. And devotees asked him in an airport, Maharaj, when did you start to chant purely? I won't mention who this was. He was leading a big movement against ISKCON. And he said, I've always chanted purely. Special you. So this person, came, retrieved that message and brought it to me as if it was supposed to tremble me out of my chair or something. And I just thought, thank you. So when I came to India a couple weeks later, I was in Vṛndāvana, in Māyāpura, sitting in a darshan with Śrīla Purī Mahārāja. Somebody asked the same question. They said, Śrīla Guru Maharaj, when did you begin to chant purely? So he was lying in his bed, kind of lying, sitting up with many pillows. He goes for his beads, takes his beads out, pulls them out, hands shaking like this, takes the beads, puts them to his head, utters a couple prayers, puts them back down and says, Baba, I've been chanting for 78 years, I cannot chant purely. And at that moment, you could have swore that paint was dripping off the walls. Everyone was just frozen. And in the back of my waking mind, I thought, that's the answer I want. Not the I've been pure from birth stuff. And just see, Prabhupada was pure from birth. Prabhupada was pure from birth. So, you were. I wasn't. What's in it for us? Śrīla Mahārāja didn't say he was pure from birth. Śrīla Purī Mahārāja didn't say he was pure from birth. Now, Yogendra says he was pure from birth. Prabhupada told him, you were born pure. But that became an obstacle. I'm born pure, Prabhupada says. He's also my good friend, and I tell him all the time, we don't have that problem. No, no, not problem. Prabhupada said born pure. I said, I told you, we don't have that problem. He was also a very good friend of mine. And then we end up fighting, and I wrestling to the ground, putting him in a chokehold, and making him agree. That's me and Navi again or something. So, we don't have that. No, I don't even want to delve into those chapters of the past. They're anything but born pure. But we see a lot of people who have pride in their birth, pride in their caste. This can be a problem, even the purity of birth. But gradually, not gradually, generally the Hare Krishna movement isn't born of liberated souls. This was also a question for Śrīla Mahārāja. Are we Prabhupada's eternal servants, or are we first-timers? He said, generally you should look upon yourself as a first-timer, not like, I had so much Sukriti in the past and I'm moving forward and whatever. Think of yourself as the lowest of the low and the fallest of the fallen, even if you're not. That's where you belong. That's where we're supposed to be. He said, but it may be possible. Some may be. Some may be. The general tenor? No. We're all fallen souls. And we're picked up on this. We're picked up. When Prabhupada gave initiation, almost exclusively, there was some lecture, something on the 10 offenses, if he didn't ask you to repeat. That was very, very important. If you're going to go forward in Krishna consciousness with the holy name, what's the first thing? Vaiṣṇava-aparādha. And if you read the history of Vaiṣṇava-aparādha, it's not like, oh, you get 10 chances, then you're out. You get 1 chance, you're out. That's it. And when you know what I know about what people have said about Krishna's chosen representatives and what they have even done physically 30 years ago to obstruct the preaching in the manner of paying goodness to attack Śrīla Mahārāja's temple. And when you can name people that they have beaten with guns, sticks, and murdered, I'd say the situation's out of control. And that was 30 years ago. Not much has changed other than the temple of violence. They don't violently treat people anymore. Now it's just pure spiritual violence. If you don't get it right, you don't get it in this life. We're not liberationists, come here to die. That's not in our stars. That's not why we're here. If you didn't come here to serve, don't come here to die. Personal opinion of mine. Up till now, that's the only thing I've told you that's personal. It all comes from either Śrīla Mahārāja or Śrīla Purī. The only thing I've said to you that isn't from previous ācāryas, authorized ācāryas by Kṛṣṇa. The only thing I said is just this last thing. Otherwise, I'm just paraphrasing. A disciple should never speak something his guru didn't speak, unless it is supported as a conclusion of his guru's teachings to him, and so forth. So this thing of the jīva, I hate to repeat the text, but I'm not going to repeat it. It was misunderstood by ISKCON leaders in probably 81 is when they put their foot down on the Jaiva Dharma issue. And it's been wrong ever since. It is so catastrophic. You're not allowed to speak about it. No one can speak about it. Even the devotees in the movement who know definitively from Bhaktivinoda and Jaiva Dharma and satsang dharmas of Jīva Goswami and from other things like Swami. They just told him, button your lip, Swami, on this one. Go on with your translations, but on this topic, button your lip. We're not allowed to talk about it. Many people know the proper siddhanta of the word of Jīva, but they cannot preach it. So they don't want to preach the wrong things, so they don't say anything. Because if you say anything without it, you can be held responsible, and all this kind of stuff. The first one is the Jīva. So Śrīla Mahārāja was called a Māyāpura by the prominent leaders of the time. They're trying to straighten our tail on the understanding of the Jīva Tattva, where we come from. Yes, if you go through Prabhupada, you see then you come from Kṛṣṇa, yes you fell, but you will not find one word where he says you were in the Leela in Kṛṣṇa, with Kṛṣṇa in a particular ras as a gopi, or as a cowherd boy, or a cow even. How do those guys fall down? That's a tough one. How does Shantaras fall down? How does Shantaras, just a bloody tree standing in the thing, giving the kalpa vriksha fruit? How does a tree become envious of Krishna? Think about it. How does a gopī become envious of Krishna? When you think about their activities, if you're Krishna's kissing Radharani, now you want to be envious of Krishna. What's that mean? It means you want to kiss Radharani? Guess what? They don't have that gender in the spiritual world. Girls don't go around kissing girls. Vatsalya, Mother Yashoda is breastfeeding Krishna. You become envious of Krishna. What does that mean? That means you want to suck the breast of Mother Yashoda. Come on. Understand, even what you're trying to say is absolutely impossible. But when you get to the cowherd boy Ras, because it's all mundane, you can see how two boys could be getting it on and finally, hey, you're out of here, you're envious. There is no envy in the spiritual world. It doesn't exist. It's a principle of the Mahatattva only. So what? Nobody falls down, never did. But yet, if you're going to say anything, you have to say, they say, as Prabhupada said. Well, Śrī Rūpānuga said, he didn't say that. And if you lay it all out there, as close as you can get to him saying that we fell from the spiritual world, the opposite is 10 times as strong. In the narration of, who is it? Jai and Vijay, Prabhupada says in the purport, the conclusion is nobody falls from Vaikuntha. So what's wrong with the guys, man? The law books, remember you guys said law books, when you want to beat the hell out of me, they're law books. When you want to get some instruction, it's arbitrary. You know, what is it? Arbitrary or instruction? What is it? They're lost, I'm telling you. And going forward, don't think that any show of opulence is any guarantee that we're on the right path. There's only one, our behavior and our understanding, that sponsors that behavior. Everything else is superficial. The best devotees that ever walked the face of this earth did not own enough of their personal possessions to fill one of those buckets. Now, I have to have a chair to sit in, and we have to have this, we have to have that, we have to have an AC, we have to have that. The greatest devotees who wrote the greatest literature of all time didn't even have lights. They did it under candlelight. They didn't have coffee shops. They didn't have racers, thesauruses, spell checkers. I would look like the grand idiot of all times without a spell checker. I would look like, where did this guy go to school? Did he go to school? I'm a bumbling idiot with the English language when it comes to typing. But thanks to Apple and a few other spiffy programs, I look like a bloody wizard. Understand that that's not what makes things substantial in the world. The external show of things. In fact, it can be a bewilderment, and Śrīla Purī Mahārāja one day said, yes, it may also be the result of Vaiṣṇava-aparādha. Another result of Vaiṣṇava-aparādha, the first one I forgot to mention, is you do Vaiṣṇava-aparādha. Guess what? You don't get leprosy. The first thing you do is you don't get the association of that level of devotees anymore, henceforth, right now. Start where you are. You make Vaiṣṇava-aparādha to that level of higher Vaishnava, you have no, you are then, cloud is covered. You cannot go forward. You know, serving one pure devotee is no rights to offend another pure devotee. This is a confusion. We're serving Prabhupada, yeah, but in which way? And how happy is he with all these little untended things? So, people have realized the mistake at the highest level. I've been dealing with ISKCON since the day I left at your highest GBC levels, executive committees. I have met with these people so many different times. Secret meetings with BTG, secret meetings with the BBT, how to make more dynamic books of Prabhupada, how to improve his magazine. I haven't left dealing with these people for 6 months in a row, since 1986. I think that's when I left. And now at one time, you know, many of these things have been admitted as wrong. And there was this big endeavor to find, where did it go wrong? Where did it go wrong? Where did it go wrong? If you look in ISKCON's history, man, it's in hot pursuit. It's called the Temple Reform meetings in the 1980s. Guru Reform meeting. Whoa, it's getting hot coals, people. It's getting right down to people are getting killed. People are getting beat up. People are falling down like flies. And they drive the whole thing down in their investigation to the zonal ācārya system. That's within ISKCON. ISKCON examining itself in the past. What was the year? Was it 90? Well, they came out with it in something like 97. because I remember Paramahansa Maharaj storming in my room and throwing the GBC resolutions on the paper, one paper, saying they're blaming Śrīdhara Mahārāja, they're blaming the zonal ācārya system for all the causes, like the bottom, like here's where we deviated from Prabhupada. We started to deviate, the zonal ācārya system. Do you follow me up to this point? I don't say you have to agree with me, but you follow what I'm saying. The ISKCON investigation led down to the bottleneck of it all comes from that. And Jaiva Dharma Maharaj went, we should have never listened to Śrīla Mahārāja. And without further investigation, for 4 years he was tagged with the start of the zonal ācārya system. Now, ISKCON had changed its system. You know more about it than I do what it is today, but it's certainly not strictly zonal. Then it was. It became that it was. So, Paramahansa Maharaj was raving about that. 4 years later, I made enough noise about it through some letters to people I know on the inside, so to speak. They're actually on the outside. So I know some people inside ISKCON. And I said, no, you guys got it completely wrong. If you want to know what happened, you got it completely wrong. So they assigned an executive committee from the executive committee. So that's high end. That's like Maha of the GBC. To come and spend 3 days with me and review the case and let me put everything, films, videos, transcribed, stories, whatever we got, there it is. You can see what happened from the first day they ever went to Śrīla Mahārāja. 3 days later, they wrote the resolution. Śrīla Mahārāja had nothing to do with the zonal ācārya system at all. In fact, he had spoken many of the things what the movement was now leaning to, means in relation to, you might be in Berlin, but you might want to be initiated by a guru who lives in Caracas. That's your shraddha, that's your faith, that's up to you. Śrīla Mahārāja recommended them that in the very beginning, the 1970s. Forget the 80s, the 70s he's recommended, and early 80s. Okay, so they wrote a resolution that's very clear to be 2001 or something like that. Śrīla Mahārāja, it's a little paragraph resolution. That's really nice. Do you know how many people they informed about this? Do you know who reads this? Have you read the resolutions this year? Have you read them? Yeah. Nobody reads them. But when you do, you get shocked, And so there, a person, let's just call him a person, was blamed for the catastrophe of ISKCON for introducing a catastrophic system which led to devotees' death. Many devotees died not even knowing Prabhupada was their guru anymore. People were told if you take second initiation from one of the chosen 11, that God brother is now your primary guru, not Prabhupada whom you received Hare Krishna. It took 20 years for the GBC to rectify that and produce a resolution that says, if you got Hare Nam from Prabhupada, guess what? You're actually primarily Prabhupada's disciple. Whether Satsvarup gave you second or Kirtananand, it doesn't matter, Prabhupada you grew. 20 years. Well, I know one fellow who's a temple president. We all know he committed suicide because he lost. And there's a suicide letter, a very famous case in the United States. Very famous case. And all kind of other things after that. People then worshipped the godbrother as if that godbrother was their main guru and then died of cancer 10, 15 years later before they could rectify the right thing. Understanding? To the grave with the wrong understanding. You don't want to do that. And you don't want to make other people do that. So what happened? Now he got the right understanding. When Prabhupada got Hare Nam, but once was a time when that wasn't so. So they're meant, as Śrīla Mahārāja explained, the reality of that relationship is there in Śrī Guru's grace. But I mentioned Bhaktivinoda because Śrīla Mahārāja is one of the most perfect representations of Bhaktivinoda in the English language that you will ever come across. Although he did not spend time devoting, translating Thakur's works, he was an embodiment of the teaching. And his experiences with Bhakti Siddhanta and the teaching of Bhaktivinoda, they go unparalleled. You can't, for us, like what could nourish you in some way, you can only find a trace of Śrīla Mahārāja's experiences with Bhakti Siddhanta, wherein Bhaktivinoda is present. Nobody magnifies that more than Śrīla Maharaj and all the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, says Bhaktisiddhanta. Now it's come to the point, Bhaktivinoda is just this chubby figure that sits on the altar and sometimes has a cool beard and wears a lot of beads. But hardly anybody has properly studied his conceptions. If you do, you understand the living entities, all these jivas, these millions of ants, billions and billions and billions of just ants. What to speak of krill? You know what krill is? Krill is a little teeny shrimp that lives in the ocean. There's so many of them. They're all a jiva soul. They all came from the Leela of Kṛṣṇa, right? There are so many of them. If they all died at once and we weighed them, they outweigh the weight of 7 billion human beings on this planet. And they are all spirit souls. Where did they come from? Kṛṣṇa Leela, they were envious of Kṛṣṇa. I don't tell you, Kṛṣṇa Leela got mega problems. Because this is one dinky planet in a dinky universe amongst billions of universes with millions of planets, and they were all vastly inhabited. The people who became envious of Kṛṣṇa. Who are these people who became envious of Kṛṣṇa? It's a lunacy. It's a lunacy. And Prabhupada only leaned on that arm of the chair to keep us away from the Māyāpura philosophy, because the two run real close together. That's where the Māyāpādīs we come from the Brahman. Because the Brahman's part of the Tatastha Shakti, where the living entities first appear in eternity. That's like if you had a bed over here for different types of herbs that you would then transplant elsewhere. It's kind of like what the Tatastha is. It's the breeding ground for living entities. And some enter the spiritual world, and some, obviously, we have seen enter the material world, but it's not based on envy at all. Nobody's envious of Kṛṣṇa and the Brahman. He simply made a wrong choice. So the question is given, if that's it. First, the Māyāpādī says, yes, you fell from Vaikuntha, because Vaikuntha is not the perfect place. When you reach the perfect place, you can never fall down. And then he said, yes, Kṛṣṇa says in Bhagavad Gita, once going there, you never fall down. But having been there for eternity already, you could fall down. Okay, but once falling down, you go back. Whew, Lord Kṛṣṇa, I have to be glad to be home, you know? And then I see you, and I go, hey, I haven't seen you in probably forgot how long, you know? And then I go, you've fallen down. And you go, of course not, you know? Doesn't that scare you? I mean, it could, you know? But me, it happened to me once, but it won't happen twice. So my position better than yours, because any day you just might, who knows, slip up. There you go, out of the spiritual world for a visit. But I've come home. And Kṛṣṇa says, once going there, one never returns. We're getting too lost on our English language. It doesn't exactly say the same kind of thing if you're just reading the Sanskrit. It's not exactly just how we identify return. Return means we've been there, you know. We're going the wrong way in Mexico all the time on the highway, and there's a returno up ahead. We're going the wrong way, we return to the right way, which we weren't going in the first place. So you just can't place Siddhanta on a little word. Back to home, back to God. First you have to understand what home is and what that means. It doesn't like, oh, here he comes, get his room ready. I did my, here he comes, oh, dude, put his stuff back. You're not supposed to use his stuff. He's been gone, I don't know, days a year. What do they think it is? You know, you're just going back home. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. You know, hi, Kṛṣṇa. Or you go there and it's like you show up, you go, where's this company go? You guys were over there. Why are we over there? Because we think we're the only ones there. That's why. You guys go over there and play. You know? It's ludicrous. Did you ever read the Oops book? It's called Our Original Position. It was published, it's there in the bookstore, by the GBC. Our Original Position. Oops. It is the biggest blunder of philosophy that ever saw it in print. It dupes and smashes anything that Sahaja ever dreamed, even in morals. It's just a total embarrassment. GBC says, well, when confronted with, nobody falls down from the spiritual world. Nobody falls down. And they said, well, they don't actually fall down, their bodies are there. So it says it right there in the book. It's like it's like watching kids play cricket in South India in a coconut field. That's fun. Balls bouncing off the trees. I mean, they're running around. Oh! Somebody move this guy to the side. We can't even play games anymore. Plus the cows are just stoned into the ground. You know? But they said, no, all the bodies of who? All these millions of ants? Is it just the cowherd boys that seem to have the traumas? Or is it the gopi? What is it? Think about it. What is it? Read that book. It's hilarious. And recently, when speaking with one of ISKCON's biggest gurus, I said, like the Oops book. And he goes, what's that? I said, oh, that's your book, the GVC book. Outside, it's called the Oops book. And he goes, well, that definitively solved the problem, I think, didn't it? And I was thinking, I didn't say it, I was thinking, yeah. Apasampradaya, it looks pretty definitive to me. Hindu movement. You go to Karakas, you go to these places, devotees have a certain fire for Sankirtan, they do certain things. You go squeezing on them, it isn't going to last. The externals is not what Mahaprabhu's movement is about. Oh, so I missed the point. Krishna Das never told anybody that Sankirtan is the secondary purpose of the Lord's appearance, not his primary. Now, what does secondary and primary mean? It's of importance. The primary is the Lord's own importance. His concern is not us. We are a secondary concern. God is for himself. He's not all troubled like the Christian God. Oh, how can I save him? Oh, everything else failed. I'll send my son and I'll kill him, and then I'll make him come up from the dead. And if they believe it, they'll be free from original sin. You know, the whole thing of Jesus is just about one stupid thing that God made to begin with? Original sin. That's the whole thing. If you study the crucifixion, the resurrection, it's all to get rid of your original sin, which God passed on to everyone because your great-great-great-great-granny named Eve ate an apple. You know what we say? God, thank God she didn't eat a watermelon. We'd all be cooked then. I mean, the whole idea of this is God or any knowledge in it is ludicrous. Devotees won't even believe when Bhaktivinoda writes in English, no intelligent person. And Prabhupada writes it in English also. Will accept Christianity. They don't want to accept that. They want to go, no, Christ, oh Kṛṣṇa, Jesus is guru, and they want to quote these preachings of Prabhupada. Yeah. I quote Satyameva Jayate. That's the slogan on the national flag. Truth will prevail. You know it. You're born in this country. Satyameva Jayate. Isn't it? It's a slogan of the country. It's a national slogan. But I use it all the time because it says truth will prevail. And there must be some truth in that because that slogan's been around a lot of places for a long time. Okay, so it depends. If you're on the inside, you can't possibly see the problems. You only feel something. If that, and maybe you feel nothing at all. I mean, what the heck is that guy talking about? Problems? Are you kidding me? You're obviously not following Woodstock, Poland the last few days. There is Rath Yatra every day. There is Kirtan every day. There is book distribution every day. All these things are going on. There's not one person in that group, including the guru or any sannyasi, who can defend against the attack of any branch of Judaism or anything else. Anybody who's attacked ISKCON, no defense. Simply going on, suffering our losses. It's called a war of, what's the word? Attrition. Just like if we ever fight China, oh man, they're just going to throw humanity at you. No bombs, just people. You know, they'll smother you to death with the number of people they can put on a battlefield. And so, because of size and so many things, we lose 2,000 people. 2,000 people in the 90s leave this country. I would be shocked. That's amazing. But they'll say 4,000 replaced them. It's a big machinery. I don't know if you can find anyone of the whole 50,000 who can defend Prabhupada against the type of accusations that have come against Prabhupada, against the Sampradaya, our Sampradaya, and his Guru Sampradaya. They don't have the firepower. When preaching to the choir, they can hold something of their own. But when meeting the other knights in shining armor on battle, who are going after the very jugular vein of Prabhupada's movement, they run away. They cannot fight because they don't know the history of Gaudiya Math, and they don't know the philosophy, the Siddhanta of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. And to get it straight, you don't go all the way to 6 Goswamis. You go back to the beginning of the modern time. and established the necessity of certain things. The best way to pretty much get it all is from the books of Śrīla Mahārāja. I have this, it's written on the back of the plans for the bookstore. Who's got that?
It's in the book.
Oh, it's right for existing. Designing a bookstore at Vṛndāvana, and I was listing some of the books. Can I read them to you? The names of the books. And when I read these names, when I wrote these down, I go, each one is a volume, and each one has been in front of me for over 25 years. And I look at this, and I go through this list, and I go, they don't have some of this. Nothing. It's in all these people. There's no chance they can make it. No chance. You can't make it. In other words, you can't establish the sampradaya going forward against the forces of Maya unless you have this information. Now, this information is all in English literature. Most of it existed in original Goswami literature and so forth. But by the time you crawl through that and put it all together, it's like your life would be over. So that's not the way it works. Krishna sends his representative, and Prabhupada sends Śrīdhara Mahārāja for those who wish to know. And more than anything now, people must know. So here's a list of books, okay? Sri Guru and His Grace, Search for Sri Krishna, Reality the Beautiful, The Golden Volcano of Divine Love, The Loving Search for the Lost Servant, Hidden Treasure of the Sweet Absolute, Prapanam Jivanamrita, Sermons of the Guardian of Devotion, volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Follow the Angels, Encounters with Divinity, Absolute Harmony, Subjective Evolution of Consciousness. This is a conversation with Śrīla Mahārāja and Swarup Damodar, explaining how we came to this world. He was headed, what's it called? BI at the time. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. We all suffer on that one. It's only in Bengali. Our Affectionate Guardians. A history from the day Prabhupada said, and before, and why he would say, if you have any questions, go to Śrīla Mahārāja. Why? Well, let me pause for a minute and tell you one of the why was he wasn't politically invested, he could have cared, didn't care anything, didn't even care to paint the walls on the walls behind his seat, the walls in his room for 10 years. He cared nothing about the external appearance of anything, especially at that age. In the seniors, is all about the internal progress. Prabhupada, the same things you probably heard him. If I tell you what Prabhupada told Achyutananda, if I tell you what Śrīla Mahārāja said, you'll faint. He said, you will faint. His realizations are very high. Now people are trying to go high, but they're not going to get anywhere near this. Okay, anyway, these books, Subjective Evolution of Consciousness, Our Affectionate Guardian, Upadeshamrita, Brahma-saṁhitā. Now, Brahma-saṁhitā from the Mahārāja. One of the most misunderstood books in the world. Everybody thinks, wow, Brahma-saṁhitā, Bhaktisiddhanta had a weird, had some way of speaking, right? Have you read it? What do you think? Have you read it? You never read Brahma-saṁhitā? No part of it? No. You worked this boy too hard. Give him a break. Anybody else read Brahma-saṁhitā at all? Which one you wrote? You read the one from Gaudiya Math or the one from ISKCON? Black, small one? Huh? The black small. Well, the black bona fide one is also black in the English one. So when you read that book, how do the words of Bhaktisiddhanta sound to you in English? Like a high level English? No. Now guess what? He didn't write one word of that book. Not a single word. That's not him speaking at all. It's a total misunderstanding. And if you have the one from the BTG, you have the one Prabhupada said that was changed. There's a record of Prabhupada saying the Brahma-saṁhitā was changed after the disappearance. So he advised the devotees, if you're going to read Brahma-saṁhitā, read the 1933 edition. Because afterwards, they changed something in that book. So I went looking for the change in that book, and there is no change. And I crawled through that thing 5 times. Until I crawled through the introduction, and there's the change. It tells you who translated the book and whose book it is. And they took that out because of court cases. And Gaudiya Math, that was taken out. And then ISKCON, when Prabhupada said, I had said it sometime, we should reprint Brahma-saṁhitā, but one was changed. Guess which one they get? They take that one and they print the Brahma-saṁhitā, and both are the same, but the introduction, like Bhakti Siddhanta, they print the one that was changed. And that's the one you do. So by not inquiring from who would know what's what, the day Varṇāśrama sits in front of Śrī Rūpānuga and says, you know, we're printing Bhakti Siddhanta's commentary on Brahma-saṁhitā. And Śrī Rūpānuga says, Bhakti Siddhanta didn't write a commentary on Brahma-saṁhitā. Varṇāśrama goes back to Māyāpura and goes, he's envious of his own guru. I've got it right here. Bhakti Siddhanta's got his name on the cover. Yeah, because in those days, the disciples were just doing everything on the guru, and they put the guru's name on the cover. The way we print a book today with a blueprint page and all that, that's not written in the Artha Shastras or something. That's just some modern evolution. So book printing, at the beginning of the 21st century, Bhakti Siddhanta's name was on so many things that are done by other devotees, because they are the hands of the guru. You see? So without going back, and so he criticized Śrī Rūpānuga, saying he's envious of his own guru. Then after the guy's well off and gone and married a non-vegetarian Jewish girl, we find out the whole story. All you have to do is read the Bengali and then you can figure it out. Oh, that would mean working. You know, we want it just to be given to us. So what was finally given to us in the English language, it clearly explains what every part of that book is. And guess what? They were just trying to make it sound hot and fancy. Those big words of describing the spiritual world that you find in here are not, you don't need a dictionary to read a proper English translation. The people who did the end, they were adding what they call hyperbole. They were just trying to make it sound like Oxford highest level, you know, whoa, you know, that's all. They were just polishing the buttons of the groove. They were just trying to give it a show. But then that became our misunderstanding for over half a century. And it's still a misunderstanding. They don't know who wrote it. Jaiva Dharma. This particular one, this one has several. This one was published by the Kṛṣṇa Balaram something or other, Sankirtan party or something. Yeah, it's probably come and gone in its day. The point is, it's translated. Sarvabhavana. Sarvabhavana has connection with Prabhupada as his full-fledged disciple. Śrīdhara Mahārāja, Sarvabhavana's oldest son, is a disciple of Śrīdhara Mahārāja. And and Prabhupāda Mahārāja. He has service, connection, and instruction with all three of these Vaiṣṇavas. And although I wouldn't put anybody's translation of anything up equal to our gurus, in the situation where they're all gone, we only have, you know, the best of what we have is there's something left from when they were here, and whatever literature they presented. So he did a really good job in translating it. But I want to read one thing. And I don't say it's perfect, but you won't get an Uppa Siddhanta here. And it's a point overlooked by 99 point in Gaudiya. Most people think this is a novel and even a work of fiction. But here's the problem. It's not. It doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the eternal plane of where the Vedas are stored. You read about this in Prabhupada's purport. At the end of the millennia, the Vedas come forth again and they're never destroyed. I told a godbrother, I said, in the future, 300 years from now, or not 300 years, that's like, you know, a kalpa from now, someone may come across an Upanishad called Jaiva Dharma, like what they call it, Isho Upanishad. Upanishads are just conversations between the rishis, and that's what this book is. So many people, and I think here Sarvabhavana might know something a little more significant, I would imagine he does, but it's kind of recorded here in the intro as a novel. And many people look at it as a novel in which Bhaktivinoda has woven the complete Siddhanta of the Gaudiya school. Our position with the impersonalists, the Buddhists, the agnostics, the different branches of Vaishnavism, Vaikuntha and everything, and all the way up to that deepest, highest end of the servitory of Mahaprabhu their Sankirtan is not on the charts. And if it is, it's something very different. It's not the Sankirtan of sending Bhakti Bill out to sell books. It's another kind of Sankirtan. Kirtan of Mahaprabhu. And it goes on, but it's a different thing completely. So, once upon a time, when discussing this book, a learned disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta praised Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura, saying, such a magnificent work of fiction, a genius work of fiction, and to incorporate the total Siddhanta of Gaudiya Vaisṇava. That was his glorification. In this Sangha, which included numerous devotees, including Śrīla Mahārāja, after this devotee spoke, Śrīla Mahārāja raised his hand and asked if he could comment. So first he praised this devotee in his praise of Bhaktivinoda, but he disagreed. This is not a novel, and it's not fictitious. It's eternal. And Bhaktivinoda has brought it down. And he even went so far as to say that these conversations happen. Like Bhaktivinoda writes an article himself. He says, one day, it's to catch your attention, while flying in the sky, I met Yamaraj and a host of others, and they called me to sit with them, and they asked me a question. You're one of Mahaprabhu's followers. We have a problem with Kṛṣṇa and the Gita and some things. Okay, now, for accurate delivery by my speech, I can't explain that. If I have to sit down and pen it, I can do it. It's complicated. But Bhaktivinoda solves a point in an assembly of Mahajans that they don't quite understand. He gives them the answer. You'll find that in Śrīla Mahārāja's Gita commentary and in Bhaktivinoda's Gita commentary. You'll find this, right? So what's he doing? Making story here? Just talk story? Yeah, one day I was flying in the sky. That sounds like some other people on the street I might have met before, That's Bhaktivinoda speaking. And anyway, lots of fun.
How should they address the problem that they have?
Well, there's just so many. It's like if somebody says, well, I want to start to get things right. Well, if you have faith that Śrīla Mahārāja and Prabhupāda's instruction are a good place to begin, you come back to this book anyway. It's like, and really what chokes them is, you have to read Vṛndāvana Maharaja's Bhakti-rasa-mrita Sindhu commentary, first and second wave. It's almost a have-to. Why? Because without any mistake, it will lay you familiar with the whole field of bhakti, all the way up to Mahabharata. It will lay you familiar with the field. Otherwise, you get lost in the vocabulary straight out the gate. And in that book it mentions, are you pure devotee? Are you initiated? No. Are you initiated? Yeah, are you initiated? You're initiated. You're initiated. You're initiated? Are you initiated? If you're initiated for more than 3 days, you should be a pure devotee. Well, what nonsense are you doing? I asked somebody the other day, are you pure devotee? He said, well, of course not. I said, well, you must be doing something wrong. How long have you been doing this? 28 years. Definitely you're doing something wrong. Then I'm referring to a letter of Śrīla Prabhupada, when the first of Prabhupada's disciples was possibly trying to be raised up as the only pure devotee outside of Prabhupada. And his name was Śrī from Hawaii. And he was also my very good friend. In fact, I joined the movement with him in 1969, 70. So, he's spacing it out.
Are you a pure devotee?
Oh! So anyway, what was I saying? So, yes, they were trying to boost him as a pure devotee, and Prabhupada says, why do you say only Sid is a pure devotee? All my disciples are pure devotees. You tried to say only this one, and this will ruin everything. Well, after Prabhupada left, we decided there were 11 pure devotees. They were pure, infallible, and could never fall down. I was chased out of a temple once for suggesting that the 11 need to be guarded from Maya, and that was suggesting that, what do you say? What are you saying? Okay, I spelled out for you. They can fall down. We better guard them. We better be careful. And what happened? Is there any of the original 11 left? Maybe. In what condition? Spiritually, they're all fallen. None of them hated. And Śrīla Maharaj predicted it all. He told certain individuals, unless they come to me and take shelter for the right reason, they will all fall down. And if you add what constitutes a fall down, it's all. Nobody's there. Nobody. When such and such guru at Delhi asked Śrīla Purī Mahārāja, I can't concentrate on my Gayatri. What should I do? He told him, stop initiating. And what was your name? Stop opening temples. Nothing stopped. It's like, stop initiating. Are you kidding me? Prabhupāda's already got 40,000 disciples. I'm behind by 20. You could be farther behind than you know. By his own admission, he's saying, I can't focus on Gayatri. And Śrīla Purī Mahārāja told him, why? Stop doing it. He didn't say stop preaching. Just stop initiating. It's become a disease. Now in the world, you can get initiation in a couple hours. I know some stories that you wouldn't believe people get initiated one day, same day, on an airplane, in a taxi ride. Your day gives the taxi driver beads on his way out to the airport, initiates a, what do you call it, a stewardess on the airplane? This is not mercy, this is lunacy. This isn't God's great mercy, this is crazy. And the worst of worst things are the things shouldn't even be spoken about in front of an altar. The child abuse, the cover-up. What does that mean, the cover-up? I'm not going to discuss it, but it's jail time if they'd have been caught in the process is what it is. Federal investigated, criminal jail time. Now, how many criminal activities make a criminal institution? Well, the FBI's, you're on the FBI's list. We were on solid for them. I was involved in the case of Bhaktivinoda Ṭhākura behind bars. You can't imagine the lust that the FBI and the DA had for him. They wanted to put him away like Charlie Manson. They had his picture right next to Charlie Manson, below the courtroom in the DA's office in Los Angeles. Right next to Charlie Manson with an X through it. They had one on there, his, 8.5 by 11, because one of Śrīla Mahārāja's disciples was involved in the case. He was being held downstairs before they called him up as a witness, and he called me long distance on there dying and told me about the closet they had with all these super criminals, these horrible people. He says, guess whose picture's in there? I said, I hope it's not mine. He goes, no, it's Kirtananda. I said, God bless, but I'm getting out of the way. And then you say, don't know. I have people in my ashram, they don't know who I'm talking about. All the kids and boys in my ashram lived 20 years, they don't know who he was. I haven't told them nothing. They have no idea who I'm talking about. Kirtananda Swami. Why talk about such a nightmare? But you all come from a society that's created by it, guided by it. Policies are set also by him, and he's taken out, policies remain. That's one amazing thing. Policies remain. They don't do anything to adjust policies. They just make advertisements and then just love bomb. It's a good salve. When we've been hurt, when we've been chomped on, to show a little love, it helps. But that doesn't mean the preaching should become just love bombing and saying things that please everybody. That's not preaching. Prabhupada sometimes spoke to Hindus, and you couldn't collect 10 cents from those Hindus after he spoke from them, because he just blew them out the water. He didn't fancy them for some money. Right there in the Imperial Hotel off Connaught Place in Delhi, big 5-star hotel, big program, Lions Club, a rodeo, I forget, we put a big seat for Prabhupada, like 45, rich Delhiites in there. I sat there with Tejas and some other devotees on the side when Prabhupada spoke. I turned over to Tejas and I said, we're not making no members out of this crowd, I can tell you. Prabhupada had their ears blown back, like pinned to their ears, like this. He's giving them a talk, and they're just like this, He wasn't a flatterer. He wasn't impressed by numbers. Can you imagine the charm of taking second initiation from Śrīla Prabhupada? That must have been a big deal. Well, when I took sannyas, 30 devotees were taken off the list for initiation. guess what? They never got back on the list for initiation from Prabhupada because he didn't initiate anybody else the rest of that time. And those were Radha-Damodar. He wasn't about numbers. He asked them all, why are there so many for second initiation? He made a little bit of talk and said, cut it in half. So many people didn't get it. I don't know that total number accuracy, 30, 20, whatever. The point was, you show me any guru today, in and out of ISKCON, and around the ISKCON, who actually cares about the understanding of the disciple before they give him initiation. It's very rare. And you never see anybody being rejected. I mean, they come. And what were they doing? They were brahmacharis on Radha-Damodar selling Prabhupada's books all day long, but you understood they're not learning anything. They're not, it's just a one-stroke process, although any of the processes are good. We need them all. And they weren't getting them all. And the Prabhupada said, so they shouldn't be initiated. Second initiation. I mean, what a blow that is. I mean, what a myth. What a myth. And then to be told later that now if you take from Tamal or somebody, he's your guru, not Prabhupada. What do you think that would do to a society of 5,000 people, where several thousand of them were in that condition? It would create chaos. And it did. People suicided. Temples burned. People left in disgust. People left in fear. There was violence. There was all kind of stuff. Oh, of course we never lost sight of the goal. How is that possible? You go through our history and you must have lost sight of the goal. How could you not? There's not. You can't sustain all the things. Apasiddhanta in the preaching, the Vaiṣṇava-aparādha, all the kind of stuff. And not just they offended Śrīla Mahārāja. They offended so many people. I was there one day when some big gurus of ISKCON came to deal with Śrīla Purī Mahārāja. And they're having put down the curtain before they get him. So they dropped the mosquito net. He wanted to keep away from them. And then they were there for a while and this and that, and he's giving them some blessing and throwing water on them, doing that thing he used to do. You've seen him do it where he chants some mantra and throws some water on them and raising them. And then they asked, can we be shiksha gurus of your disciples? Somebody asked me, are you there? I said, no, I had them lock myself in the room. Because if I had to come out of that room, there's going to be blood all the way over that ashram, right down the street. So I just stayed in my room. And they asked me the point, can we be shiksha gurus for your disciples? He said, Baba, it's the duty of all sannyasis to preach the banner of Mahaprabhu to everyone. Jaiva Dharma then went home that day and said, Śrīla Purī Mahārāja said I could be shiksha guru. And he was after he left the world, he kept repeating that over and over and over again, but he doesn't know what happened. And Śrīla Purī Mahārāja himself was almost blind and this and that. And then when they left the room, they were out on the veranda for a few minutes, and then they left, and Śrīla Purī Mahārāja rings his bell, calls them back in and says, are they gone yet? Yes, Guru Mahārāja, they're gone. And they opened the thing, take me out of the box. It's like, protect me from these people. It was his move, just deal with them, throw some water on them, and let them go. There was no heart embrace with any of those people, except Bimal Prasad, who died now. And when he was dying in Australia, he wasn't allowed to come to the temple. He'd been totally rejected. He was one of the oldest devotees in the South African yatra and this and that. Bimal Prasad was he's very known to Indradumna and a lot of these devotees of that, that genre in ISKCON. But at the end of his life, after a lifetime of service, and he helped build the first big temple in South Africa, he was not allowed to come to the temple, was Brahmananda. Go to his samadhi, it says the most dear disciple of Prabhupada. That's Gargamuni speaking. I have a problem with that. Brahmananda is dear to Prabhupada beyond any of our imaginations. Any of our imaginations. So dear to Prabhupada. However, some people might say, wait a minute, the dear most? Yeah, that's Brahmananda. Well, you should have put there. And not allowed to go to the temple. Well, maybe for some true reason. Everybody has a right to say who comes and goes, kind of, but not there. You know why? It's a public temple. Radha-Damodar is a private temple. It's owned by a family. We can stop anybody from coming in there anytime we want for no reason whatsoever. But there you can't do it. It's a public temple. In fact, if we got enough life members together and wanted to play dirty politics, we could take it over. It's a public trust. And public trusts are always answerable to the public. And the public has a say-so. So I would never do that or tell anybody how to proceed to do that. But that's a precarious position. That when the wrong person comes around, they might do that. It's possible. They're not private, they're public. And there are laws of public institutions, and they don't follow any of them. And that is, you have to listen what the public says also to a certain degree. Prabhupada's own son sued ISKCON after Prabhupada left the world and tried to lay claim to all ISKCON property in India. That was a court case of what must have gone for close to 10 years. The Indian people do weird things. So ISKCON is not stable, even as an institution. They're a public institution. And if the wrong amount of vindictiveness, backed by enough money, was to come to the table, they'd be in some serious trouble. Because they got issue. We can even challenge. They can even challenge the Bhaktivinoda Gurukul. It's not Gurukul. They teach the Darwinianism. They teach a state curriculum approved education, which is drawn up by the Christian community of India. Christian community in India was given the charge of education by Nehru from the beginning, and they've been in those public offices ever since. And Modi and his group have been fighting that, and they say, oh, he's trying to saffronize the history. I don't know, Modi and them just want to tell the real history. How many people the Christians slaughtered when they came to Goa and those places. The real history of India. How St. Xavier brought the Inquisition to India and burned over 50,000 Hindus, including Brahmins, and lapsed Christians at the stake. 50,000 is the recorded death toll in Goa. It's taught nowhere in India. But it's in the history. So Christians. So we teach Christian curriculum at Bhaktivinoda Swami Guru. And plug in some other stuff. Those teachers, they don't laugh and go, oh, well, you know, we're studying Darwinism, we have to do it. No, those aren't devotees, all of them. They're hired teachers. And they teach the curriculum. And then the kids got to sort it out themselves, or you got to sort it out later, but it's not a gurukul. It's a public school with a government curriculum. Now, I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm just saying it's not the Bhaktivinoda Gurukul that he wanted. The BBT has been cut in half. There's two BBTs, the original one and Prabhupada's. When you start down the road, we could go past lunch, dinner, and into tomorrow just recording the catastrophe. What? They split the BBT. How many thousand changes in the BBT-I, that's ISKCON, and BBT is, well, I don't know, they keep selling their interest, but it started with Hansa Duda, and I think it got...
Oh, it's horrific.
Huh?
No, it's horrific.
Yeah, it's in the hand of the Ritviks. Whatever Ritvik is in your mind, they own the original BBT, not ISKCON. How did it come to this? Who knows about this? Didn't see that elephant, did you? There's great samosas for dinner today, blah, blah, blah. Let's all go to the restaurant. All a big show, all a big show. Foundation is cracked and rotting, as we call it. If they don't get it right, it'll collapse in the future. It can't go on. And somebody say it's impossible. Prabhupada started it. What happened to Gaudiya Math then? Bhaktisiddhanta started it. What happened to so many things in this world? How did hell Aurangzeb come here and break Govindaji's temple? If you don't think these things can happen, it's just because Prabhupada did it, you're crazy. Just because he did it doesn't mean we can carry it forward and preserve it. The material world is a perpetual challenge. It never stops. It's always aggressive against what we want to do. And it's winning. The material world is winning. Many devotees, not millions, thousands or something, but why one devotee should have a picture of Lord Jesus Christ on his altar? Along with Gauri Tai and the Panchatattva and all of that. But they do. In Hawaii, there's so many devotees. Devotees I've seen, they have Buddha on their altar. Just don't tell them who Vamsidas was. They'll love to get him on their altar too. Just another cool thing. Vamsidas was a river pirate. Nobody knows who he's initiated by, actually. But from him, everybody knows he's Uttam Purush Avadut. And the first time I saw him, I thought he was a Nagababa. I saw a picture of him on a Gaudiya Math altar, and I thought, oh my God, these people lost the plot. They got Nagababas on their altar. That was like 1976. Then I learned, oh, that's not a Nagababa. That's Bhamsidas. And it does have to suffice to say Bhamsidas was an Avadut, but there are informations and stories about Bhamsidas. There's even a chance Prabhupada might have taken his Mahaprasada, because Bhaktisiddhanta did, right up to his disappearance. They brought him Mahaprasada of Bhamsidas. He lived to be in the 115, 20 plus years also. Have you seen his picture? You know who he is? Yeah. You know who he is, Bhamsidas? You know, he's red locks. His eyeballs look like the beginning of a ghost movie. He's an Avadut, whoop, right off the charts, you know, slapping his deities around, turning them over his knee, giving them a fanning. It's like, Bhaktisiddhanta taking his mama. Here's that, you know. Whoa. What are we involved in? Now, when I say you have to set the clothesline right, you have to go all the way back to here. You don't have to go back to the Goswami, you go to here. And here is Kamala Manjari. Across our Sampradaya, the identity of Bhaktivinoda. The rotund, jolly-looking Bhaktivinoda is Kamala Manjari. Descend coming down from the camp of Srimati Radharani to re-establish the Sampradaya when it is all but lost. There's just, it takes him nearly 20 years before he can find Jagannath Das Babaji. It took him 10 years to locate a single copy of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. What does that mean? Lost. What was everywhere? The Sahajiyas, the 14 Sahajiyas and everything. And it begins, although they're there, hidden, and they come out, and they all end up being around Bhaktivinoda at the time. Jagannath Das Babaji, Vansi Das Babaji, Gorkishore Das Babaji. And there were others whom we don't even get their names, really. Maybe not the same level, but, you know, exalted practitioners. But overall, they held no sway over the society. They were just hidden. And he reestablishes everything. So it begins with Bhaktivinoda. And Jaiva Dharma is said to be his most valuable work for a full view of, this is like if you were to paint the definitive picture of Vṛndāvana, like super wide angle. You show all this, everything in one foot. Amazing. That's Jaiva Dharma. Everything is in there. And until Sarvabhauma's translation, we really didn't have a good one. The whole Gaudiya Math's been reading this for 150 years or whatever. It was written in, I think, 1874. No, 1896, the year Prabhupada was born, Jaiva Dharma. Same year Bhaktivinoda sends the first book to the West. Prabhupada was born, 1896. That's such a meaningful thing in the glorification of Śrīla Prabhupada. That he's born the year that Bhaktivinoda's book goes. No interest in the book. No interest in the book that he wrote and what he says. Only interest in the coincidence of date. But without knowing what's in the book and the importance of that, the coincidence of date is simply that. Coincidence of date. How many other people in the world were born that day in India? Thousands of them. But the speciality of Prabhupada is revealed in a life story. And then, yes, the first message comes in 1896 in a book to McGill University, and the messenger himself comes, whatever, 50, 60, how many it was? 70 years later, Prabhupada comes to the West. Krishna is in no big hurry to set our tails straight, because we're just one little itsy, bitsy, teensy, weeny speck somewhere amongst billions of universes, and the Sankirtan movement's going on in all those places. We think we're the most important factor. What's the most important factor is that we get connected to that thing that's sustaining universes and everything. That primary reason that Mahaprabhu came has to be brought into focus. We have to know what that is. And the people that are looking there, they're doing it all in their own way. They're running ahead. They want to read Gita Govinda, Ujjvala Nilamani. They want to read these intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna, but they don't know what it means to follow in the footsteps of the gopis. Remember that question. What does it mean to follow in the footsteps of the gopis? What does it mean? Well, if it's a Shaki Beki, it says to dress like this young lady here, so that I can't even tell, except for that scruffy looking beard you got, that you're even a woman. Shaki Beki. You know what they are? You ever see one? You know, they dance, they do. What are they doing? You tell them, they're saying, we're following in the footsteps of the gopis. To get the mood, to get the bhāva, to get the whole thing. Well, is that what it means to follow in the footsteps? I say, and our gurus say, no, that's not what it means to follow. That is imitation. That will be immediate falling down. And you may be banned for eternity. They'll lift the ban, but you'll be, can you imagine? Whoever said they're a guardian, and they can ban you. Like this sounds all hot to ban this book, hot to ban that person. How about ban from eternity? Don't want to do that. Don't want to get banned.
Actually, Pradyumna, he spoke, and he said that the books of the Goswamis, it was written, these are for my selected friends. They didn't write them for public distribution.
Oh, absolutely. And some of the books weren't even written for the friends. They were written for the pleasure of the divine couple. That's it. Who wrote it? It's just like your lover, right? Your maidservant writes a poem about you and your paramour. Is that to show to the public? Or is that for your maidservant to show to you whom it's about? Is there not intimacy in love? Even can anybody understand that? Of course there is. What? The divine couple, no intimacy, they're open book for whatever we want. Ha! Joke's on you, my friend. They're open for nothing you want. Nothing you want are they open for. Closed book forever. That's the first thing. We're on the morning walk with Prabhupada once, and he goes, as soon as you say, I want, it is Maya. I want to chant 16 rounds. I want to worship the deity. I want to be a Bhagavatam preacher. I want to be a guru. I want, it's Maya. It's Maya's kingdom. He said, what does Kṛṣṇa want? This we must find out. He said these things. Then we walked on, I had a clue what he was talking about. He was here, that's all that mattered. And he wasn't. And now it's what, 39 years later? 39 years later? If I was a young kid today, I don't know, maybe if I was deranged enough, but knowing what I know now, if I was a young person searching, I would never join this. Total waste of time.
Actually,
I would find my guru, no matter what it took, where he was, who he was.
Prabhupada says in CC, if there is not a suitable candidate to take initiation from within the field, one should simply take shelter of Kṛṣṇa.
Well, Vṛndāvana is where you can do that, you know. Prabhupada told us, he said, the Brajavasis don't need a guru. Kṛṣṇa is the guru. The question is, what's a Brajavasi? So, maybe a family who's been serving, say, Radha Damodar for 350 years, maybe those kids are Brajavasis. 350 years of being born here might flying in, driving in from LA and delivering a child here is not what it takes to make a Brajavasi. They pack him up in a little tram and take him off to some other part of the world. That's not Brajavasi. You got to stay here and suffer the hot season year after year after year after year after year after year after generation. Prabhupada, there's so many stories in Vṛndāvana. And he did say, Kṛṣṇa is their guru. However, if we come from outside, just to think for a long time, Kṛṣṇa is our guru, that could be problematic. But for a beginning, it's a good beginning. But it's understood that, you know, anybody from the world, conditioned soul, will do better if they have the guidance of a bona fide guru. One quick thing before you go. The books of Śrīla Purī Mahārāja, the books of Śrīla Śrīdhara Mahārāja, which add to the experience of all that Prabhupada has given us, those books are completely devoid of karma mishra bhakti or even jnana mishra bhakti. They are only guidance on jnana sunya bhakti, pure devotion. They don't deal with Varṇāśrama. They don't deal with what we need to do to the material world. They deal with the internal development of the devotee who has to do that to save the world. First, save the devotee. You see? They're not dealing with any of these other things. Only the internal bhajan of the devotee is nourished by these books. If you want to preach in the world, follow Prabhupada. He's the example. But that's not the total. You know, Prabhupada said things like Tripurari Maharaj and Rameshwar will see Radha Krishna in the street. He wrote a letter, said, Bali Mardan will see Radha Krishna soon. What happened? Something happened. They stumbled up big time. Well, Śrī Rūpānuga can help us from stumbling so hard. And had they listened to him, they'd be giving this talk, not me. Thank you for coming and listening. I can't imagine the things that are in those books. But books isn't the answer. That's part of the answer. Guru, sadhu, and books, shastra. Three things are important. Kṛṣṇa, no ācārya only ever said one thing is important. But what if you had a choice? You can have all the books of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, of all the great ācāryas ever, and Vyasa himself. No devotee, no senior devotee. You'll be left with those books. Or you can be left with truly a self-realized soul and a Paramahansa. But no books. Not only no books, no pen and paper. You will not be able to write down one thing from this verse. Which will you choose? Most people choose the books. That's the wrong choice. You can stare at those books for infinity and never enter pure devotional service. And every once in a while you'll come across a verse that just tells you, you're way out of your league, you have to serve the lotus feet and the dust of the pure devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or you are nowhere. Every once in a while those kind of those signboards pop up. So it would be better to live with no literature, even pen and paper, with a self-realized soul. That would be better for you going forward in realization in Kṛṣṇa than having all the Vedas and everything and being blown. You'll never figure it out. Especially if it was all the Vedas. When you die before you can even figure out what is the first step. It's just buried in blah. And then once you get to the book, everything up to nine canto is for purification and preparation to accept Kṛṣṇa and as the Ashraya Tattva. And then within that, you get the feminine Ashraya Tattva. The Bhagavatam is actually simply singing the glories of Radharani, meaning its ultimate realization or ultimate understanding. You don't go from beginner to ultimate. We need to go progressively. Prabhupada says, in the books, if you're not free from sex desire, don't go past second canto. So why was such and such Maharaj, who had an addiction to looking at pornography his whole life, continuing to read Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 6th canto, 10th canto, all this stuff, should have stayed in his category and seen a psychiatrist, because pornography is a disease. It's a mental disease. One should not even see oneself naked, Prabhupada said. Now, see what's happened in the world, I can understand what is the psychology behind that. Nudity produces insanity, according to the status of a self-realized soul. Nudity. And I remember, it wasn't until 1972 when we even knew to wear a gumshoe in the showers. There are 15 guys in the showers in any temple in the world, and the women the same. Nobody was covering themselves, nothing. And then somebody comes through and says, Prabhupada said we shouldn't be naked even in the shower, even before ourselves, even before a mirror. It'll drive you crazy. That's what they said. That's what he said. So that's a hard one to put out there in the world. But look at the world. Look how twisted it is. And the most Googled thing in the world on Google is pornography. In India, it's off the charts. And it's all coming from women in households during the daytime hours. Not the IT kids. They're doing it at night. They're busy working at Wipro and all this stuff all day. The mothers and everybody's at home looking at pornography off the charts more than any other country in the world. Right here in old pious India, which has gone to hell in a handbasket. They'll be doing that stuff right here in Vṛndāvana. Bet your booties. Nobody wants to address reality. There's everything here. Hookers, liquor, non-veg. They're preaching Līla. I've been watching it my whole life. And then you get clowns like Kripali. And what's that mean? He just built temples bigger than anyone could imagine in their wildest dreams here in Vṛndāvana. Don't they see the message? Krishna is I don't care how big it is. Even these guys can build temples out of marble. How big it is matters not. What's preached there. That's creepy. Yeah. We used to call it creepy alus. It means rotten potatoes. Like Siddhalu. Govindra Maharaj told us that story. He was somewhere as a kid in the village, and there was some siddha nearby. So they would say, "Oh, we have one siddha," and the devotees, "Oh, Siddhalu, we love Siddhalu." Not Siddhalu, Siddha, Uttarpru Siddhalu. Alu, Veggie. They just throw it back in their face. No, he's a Siddha Purus. You know, it's like he's bogus. Gaudiya Math had to fight before I was born, before you were born, or any of us were born. They were fighting Maya, preaching the glory. And you know what the first Gaudiya Math temple was called? Bhaktivinoda Āśrama, a seat of Bhaktivinoda. So it's really important. Yeah, so many things are important. It's massive, massive. If somebody said I wanted to take an institution, I say forget it. Paramahansa, a good friend of mine once, I visited him as he was having what's called the WVA, the World Vaiṣṇava Association meeting or something like that in Hungary. And I walked in the temple room, there was 250, 300 devotees packed in there sitting down. They were right in the middle of there were 3 or 4 sannyasis sitting there, and the guru was there, and they were having a program. And I just kind of arrived at that time. So they pulled me right up to the front, and it was kind of towards the end. And then one of Paramahansa Maharaj's disciples asked me, "Maharaj, could you speak to us how to unite all the Vaishnavas?" I got the microphone. I said, "Well, you asked the wrong question to the wrong person, because I'm not for harmony at all. I see the value in difference. You be what you will be. You will grow. And you will serve, you will be what you are, and you will search truth according to your capacity. You lump us all together, and it seeks its lowest level that we can all function. That's not how it has to be." Even Prabhupada had a design of independence. Independence, not centralization. Autonomy. Temple president was for life. How many temple presidents I have? Who's temple president now? Hell, I used to be temple president of Kṛṣṇa Balaram. Who's president now? Who will be the president in 10 years? He said it was a life thing. Go read the letters. What are we striving for? Solution? Change the temple president. That's not a solution. Stick. Stop this change, he would say. Stop this change, he would say. You know about the time the guy wrote Prabhupada and asked if he could become a woman? Clearly asked him if he can change and become a woman. And Prabhupada said, yes. But make a choice and stick with it. Just jumping back and forth is not good. So there you go. He's a practical person. Okay, you got the wrong body with the mind. You do your thing once, not going back the other way. You know. And he did. And I met her in 1987 in San Francisco. Frank became Francis. That's right there in Prabhupada's letter. So, you know, but they didn't say, let's open a gay and Vaishnava lesbian temple and give initiation. Then what are we going to have? Transvestite gurus to deal with the people of the confused sector? I mean, what are we talking about here? Civilization. What's Prabhupada say? No place in human civilization for homosexuality. And how can they be discussing it? So, the Prabhupada says are simply pick and choose. Relative statements, absolute statements, suggestions, strict orders. It's not everything that you're saying. It's just all the same. There are different things. So you have to look at the whole thing. You have to look at our hit to get the philosophy right. And it's not just the jīva. The next biggest one, and it starts with the guru. The guru tattva is completely misunderstood. It's been institutionalized, and that is not the connection to Krishna. The institution. Recently, Swami's disciples were advised that although he's retired and taken away as sannyasa, whatever it was, they're okay. They're safe. Because, the letter says, you were initiated according to ISKCON law. It's just like, I only wish we could make some laws that would guarantee our connection to the absolute, infinite, supreme Lord. But unfortunately, that's no guarantee at all. ISKCON law. There was no ISKCON law in the Prabhupada time. Do you know how thick that book is now? It's over 1,000 pages. I could throw every ācārya out of ISKCON based on their own laws that they keep creating and create. Like it says, if anybody reads anything other than Prabhupada's books, a transcribe, listens to a lecture, sees a video, sits and hears somebody who's outside the authority of the GBC, you'll be suspended for 6 months. And if you are not corrected, it says it, you'll be excommunicated.
Yes, he got excommunicated.
I'll probably join you later. Excommunicated. Now you know that's a heavy word. It means severed from God. Who do you think we are? That somebody can vote. And you know what? You could be reading the purest of absolute truth and then get excommunicated from God because he said so. Right. Where are we going now? What's the next movie? Night's still young. There's plenty to enjoy here. This is crazy. It's lunacy. If you've seen something else, if you're in touch with something, like they promised when I left, they promised he will dry up, for the exact words, like a stick severed from the tree. Chop the limb and let it lay. But I ended up being like a banyan tree. I took root. And as I grew up, all the people who said that, not just about me, it has nothing to do with me, but people who said that, they're all gone. They're all gone. They're all gone. And I mean gone. And even the ones that are hanging on the cliff, major issues. Personal and philosophical. Philosophical meaning proper understanding of Krishna. So because the whole thing is deviated in the guru-tattva, it's not possible to understand the other tattvas properly if the guru-tattva is not properly understood. Who are the guru, different manifestations of the guru, and even this. See, Krishna doesn't care about who you feel your sentiments towards. What Krishna cares about is which of his agents can help you the most. So it's natural, of course, we wouldn't think irrelevant, but I can bring to you people, sannyasis, brahmacharis, and grihasis, the ones that can speak English. They can sit down and give a class on any book of your choice. They won't, just book of your choice, not Prabhupada's book of your choice, because they have never read Prabhupada's books, ever. And they will give a perfect Krishna conscious lecture, a perfect Krishna conscious lifestyle. There are people who have never read Śrī Rūpānuga Bhajana Āśrama, Jaiva Dharma, and a lot of their downline has never read Prabhupada's books. But they are Krishna conscious by anybody's testing, measure, litmus test, you name it, they are. Islam should understand that. Prabhupada is not the only entry to Krishna, but the parampara is. And they are fastly separating themselves from the parampara over a period of some 35 plus years. There's been active separation, and what they've missed is what they need. If they had got what was given along the way by Krishna, they would be facing the same problems they face today. Maybe other problems, certainly problems are always there. But these problems are quickly and easily solved. But now it's too late. It's too late. Now only the individuals, I think, can save themselves by adopting the right attitude, all these things. Service. I know people who've been reading Śrīla Mahārāja's books since before I have. They never surrendered, they never offered any service, they just tried to take something out of those books and present it to embellish their own repertoire of preaching. Once, one of our devotees, before he joined our ashram, was a personal assistant of a sannyasi who gave a seminar at Krishna Balaram temple on Saranagati, surrender. He was a sannyasi from Europe with many disciples, so this bhakta was assisting and everything. And it was all very, very enlightening, very fresh. Everything was very new. He was conducting the whole course from Prapanam Jivanamrita, which is written by Śrīdhara Mahārāja in 1943, published by Prabhupāda's sister in 1943. He's giving the whole discourse based on the layout of Prapanam Jivanamrita, with not even showing the book to the devotees. It's in his room, and he's planning day by day going forward. It had already been planned. He had his papers, he had his little pieces of, the stickies when we do a major study on something. And, but he never mentioned where his source was, So it's like the trick where you give the guy $100 bill and he puts it in his pocket and you've got this fine string attached and he walks away and he goes, You see it in like Charlie Chaplin movies and stuff, they snatch the money back. Well, that's the way this whole thing is. You go there and get it, and as you walk away with it, it disappears. But you walk away with something. You walk away with jnana, not bhakti. And so you can have people speaking on the same subject, it's just on bhakti. So somebody might ask me how much I study. Well, I hadn't read Bhagavad Gita in 30 years, and I wrote a commentary after that 30 years. That's how much I study. Now, it's a simple commentary for beginners, but at the same time it touches points which are not so simple. So, I don't study, and I'm not a scholar, although I have read all the books that I speak about. I don't study, I'm not a scholar, I'm a servant. I serve, and by service, I have an understanding of whatever they put in my ear and put me behind my eyes. Take away the service, I don't understand nothing. This is jnana, some knowledge, and you try to put it together, you never figure it out. It's impossible. It's Krishna's Yoga Maya, just covers the whole thing. Going the wrong way, and you got Krishna's Mahamaya, not his Yoga Maya. You just turned over to another department, go there, get out of our way. You can't force your way, can't, luckily, it's a descending process. After a time, we're simply waiting for that grace to descend. And if it descends once in a lifetime, that you can even measure on a clock, count yourself amongst the blessed souls of the universe. Because Krishna doesn't just stand there in front of you forever. Who did he reveal himself to? In a flash of lightning, who then searched the rest of his life? That was Narada Muni, right? As a child, right? Didn't he? No. Without even hearing, without seeing, he searched for his whole life and saw Krishna once. And then the story is there. Once! For a flash. What's a flash? Well, a flash of eternity could last for eternity. Because it's not subject to time, but it's just a flash. But some people try to say Krishna is dancing with them all the time. You're going? Feel free. There used to be this place on the Jamuna where these Babas would live, and there was a darshan. In the morning you would come, and they had this arena. And there's these little footprints of Radha and Krishna's children. And these Babas were making their show, So I did that one day too. I made this nice arena, and I smoothed it all out, and then I made footprints. You take your hand like this, you go bonk, and then you go doop, 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 doop. Right foot, doop, 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 doop. Left foot, and you just made something. So these guys had some stick with the foots on it, and they would go like this all over the place. And the idiot villagers come and they throw some coin and they bite your body, and that's a sadhu in the braj. Like the people who are seeing the Kaliya at night, Mahaprabhu, and they say, Krishna dances on Kaliya. It's just a fisherman with his lantern in the lake. You remember? In Chaitanya Charitamrita? What? All that shenanigans stopped? No. It just took off like brush fire. This place is full of shenanigans. Indraduna Swami paid $3,000 to chant on Gadadhar Pandit's beads. I'm going to offer him a chance for $5,000 to chant on Rupa Goswami's beads, because I have them. Right? 3,000 Gadadhar Pandits, 5,000, maybe 10,000 for Rupa Goswami. Turns out they're not Gadadhar Swami's Pandit's beads. Every Casco Swami in this town knows what the hoo-ha that. They're just a set of beads. And my Rupa Goswami's beads are Siddhabakul beads that we made, and they're hanging in there as Rupa Goswami, the deity, as his beads. So Indraduna Swami pays $3,000 to chant on somebody's lie. And does it with the most sincere. Just got hoodwinked at the carnival, Maharaj. Got took in by the circus grinders. I'm just waiting to meet him the next time I meet him and tell him. I'm not speaking behind somebody's back. It's ridiculous. All this stuff. I saw a picture of a big ISKCON guru sitting clutching the leg of some nondescript Baba, who we would... Nondescript, non-parampara, or some like, oh yeah, right, yeah, sure. Just some, oh, he's in the line of. Well, trouble is, you found him at Bhaktisiddhanta Kundi. All the lines were examined in the time of Bhaktivinoda Bhaktisiddhanta, and guess what? They were all broken and contaminated and polluted. And the whole thing had to start again. That's Bhaktivinoda, that's the start. So we have to go all the way back to Bhaktivinoda, and we will see that everything Śrīla Mahārāja and Śrīla Purī Mahārāja, and who has added to us, added to our content, and embellished upon our content, and helped us to understand the content of Prabhupada's books and who he is, especially the disciples direct. It's very important. That's all there. And it's easy to understand Bhaktivinoda too when you get shown kind of like, oh, really? There's an order to this stuff? Yeah, there's an order to this stuff. It's like the kid who dives right into the sweet rice at the feast. How are you going to enjoy the pakora and the tamarind chutney, right? You know, there's a way to eat properly, you know, especially the Bengalis, you know, the bitter shocks first. It's like fruit. You give somebody fruit, there's grapes, and then there's oranges, but it's always advisable to tell them, in order, which ones are the sweetest in terms of ripened up. Because if they eat the sweetest one first, say it's the watermelon, really sweet, then when they eat the grape, it's like, sour grape, you know? But if you eat the grape first, it's actually sweet, and then you progress in sweetness. Something like that. The literature is like that. And some of it's just meant to be printed in gold, if you're a Kurupati, if you will, and set on the altar. That's it. It's not for you. It's for Radha and Krishna's pleasure and the pleasure of their associates. It's stated. Or it says this book is for the stage of rati, which can be considered a shakti, intense attachment. But rati usually means bhava and prema. That simple little book that reads even to a child, Radha Krishna Ganadesh Dipika, is actually the food for bhava bhakti. Those who have rati, at least intense attachment for Krishna. That means anartha and riti, finished. All anarthas, gone. Otherwise, you can't have intense attachment, and that's who that's book for. But you can buy it for 30 rupees at a Lopes or anywhere else and read it, and guess what? It's got mistakes in it. Mega mistakes, like abandoned ship, like nothing. This book is now equal to nothing. It is useless. In fact, if you swallow that verse, you're poisoned. Right there in a book. Everybody's looking at it, reading it. But I don't see the poison. You know why? Because they're not even swallowing it. You can't even swallow this stuff to where it's supposed to go unless you're opened up for it. In other words, unless you are to receive it, you can't even get it if you go there to take it. You don't get it. You get something completely different. But don't expect to see any of that happen anytime soon. Mass change. As soon as someone changes, the guillotine comes through and just whacks off their head.
That's when we get what we deserve. That's what we get.
People tell me sometimes, they say like, oh man, they're selling Śrīla Mahārāja's books now. And I go, that's not a good sign. Wait a minute, you've been saying for Śrīla Mahārāja, now Śrīla Mahārāja's books. Now you're telling me it's not a good sign? I say, no, well, Prabhupada didn't want anarchy. He wanted coherent, cohesive, correct understanding. Not revolution, anarchy, stop me, it's my store. And they sell anything and everything. That's not what Prabhupada wanted. You know, someone says to me one day about 15 years ago, Maharaj, come on up to the temple. And I said, no, I don't think I'm going to do that anytime soon. It creates a problem. He says, oh, come on up, nobody cares. I said, another point, why do you think I want to go where nobody cares? And that means the market. I don't even go to the market once in a week now. I can't stand the market. Nobody cares. Why go where nobody cares when you could be with your family, with people who you love, with people who love you? I mean, why go where nobody cares? Come on up, nobody cares. Then what do you think I'm going there? Prabhupada's darshan? It's just like, Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa. I never thought I'd ever say, I have Prabhupada's darshan all the time. Well, except when I'm in Maya. But I don't have to go somewhere to get it. That's the point. You don't have to go somewhere to get the darshan of your guru. And gurus throughout history, or disciples have said, my guru is always with me. Once I asked Śrīla Purī Mahārāja, is there a tape recording of Bhakti Siddhanta? He looked at like me, I was the biggest idiot that God had ever put in front of him. We're asking for recording. You know what he says? He says, Baba, Guru Maharaj is here with us all the time. And that's another thing. Like, you asked Bhaktivinoda Govinda about the night he went to record Kṛṣṇa's Babaji on the Kadasi in Imritala, right? They're going to spend a whole night with Babaji at Imritala. Babaji sits up on his bed, wintertime, throws his blanket around. It's 9:30. He starts chanting. Bhaktivinoda Govinda Maharaj, who was then something else, Brahmacharya or something. Ayodhyapati. He pushes that tape recorder forward. And Babaji says, tonight, no nonsense. We do bhajan. Right? It made him turn it off. And a few minutes, and the devotees are sitting there, and Babaji's chanting on his japa. There's like just 5 devotees there. And a brahmacharya comes in the door, goes to the other end of the room, turns off the light, crawls in his bed, and goes to sleep. And it goes pitch black. It's like an Akadasi before Namavasi or something. There's no moon, it's dark. And Babaji sits there all night and just chanting japa. No recording, no questions, no answers, just chanted japa. Till 4 of the ones slept on the floor in front of him. And bringing the Govinda Maharaj managed to stay there till about 4 and then said we have to go back to our temple. No recording, no nonsense, he said. And that person is the one who brought Sudhir, I heard this from Sudhir, brought Sudhir to see Śrīdhara Mahārāja for the first time. And yeah, they had heard he's over in Navadvip with Śrīdhara Mahārāja's ashram, so they came over to record his kirtans. So they're asking about recording your kirtans, and this is way after Prabhupada's left the world. This is 81, 81, when it first started. And, yeah, somewhere late, you know. And so they come, and he's downstairs. He's downstairs. So Sudhir comes, they want to record. They tell Babaji, you'd like to record some, you know, they got their drum and everything. A little recording. Babaji looks at him and says, and Sudhir dramatizes. I love the way he dramatizes. Wait! He dramatizes though. Not just wait, like wait. He dramatizes it. Then Babaji goes away and he comes back and then he comes the next word. Come. Come. You know, like, shh. You don't call India people like this. This is an insult. Call like this. Put your hand down, not like this. Come, right? They go up there and there's a curtain. And Babaji says, wait. And they stand outside this curtain. And he goes behind the curtain. And there's I've never seen it, but on the side chair, on the side, before you entered that other hall, there was a way to block that, apparently, at some time, a curtain slid across or something. Or am I thinking they ended up, Sudhir said it was a side room and there was a curtain. Anyway, all of a sudden, it's like a deity darshan at Bunky Hari. Whoosh! The curtain opens. There's Śrīdhara Mahārāja in this 19th century chair with the things that, you know, he's just sitting there like on a throne. And Babaji jumps behind him. And goes, Śrīdhara Mahārāja, listen, Śrīdhara Mahārāja. And then he began to speak and it all came. That's how it started. Śrīdhara Mahārāja, you listen. And you know who else got over there? Came to Babaji to take sannyas. Babaji. And that was Vṛndāvana. Vṛndāvana gave up sannyas and took Babaji Vesh after touring around. He went back to South America and decided to put on the Babaji Vesh. And then when he came back to Māyāpura, he was staying somewhere, and the inspiration for his Babaji Vaish was Krishna Das Babaji. So he gave up sannyas, became a Babaji. And then when he came back in, he came to find Babaji to say, I'm with you. You know, Babaji was, oh, no. You have misunderstood everything. Misunderstood everything. He's going like this. Misunderstood. You come. He took him across the river. You listen to Śrīla Mahārāja. First he told Śrīla Mahārāja, this sannyasi saw me, now he's a Babaji. Save him. That's how the whole of South America enters in to what is Śrīla Mahārāja. Next big one was Parmadvaiti, when that whole thing went. 1,000 devotees left this one in one day. 1,000 devotees. Can you imagine? 1,000. The whole of Colombia, ISKCON, belongs to Parmadvaiti. They had to re-register a new society starting over again because everybody in Colombia joined with Śrīla Mahārāja. Everybody. They finally had it up to here, the abuses, being called Sudra Americans, you name it, they'd had it. Instead of saying, come, they went, go, you know. They gave it that, you know. But yeah, there was, and so Bobby says, oh, you misunderstood my problem. So then what happens? He gets sent back to Kakwa, right? Or somewhere. And he readjusts, Śrīla Mahārāja readjusts his sannyas, and he gives up being a Babaji. Śrīla Mahārāja helped many individuals. Not just the grand scale of what is Bhaktivinoda, everything that comes forth from that, but just on just little simple practical things to help Prabhupada's movement over and over again. Oh, so many things. And conceptually, no one has done more to add charm and finish polishing the unpolished gems of the Bhagavatam, the unpolished gems even of the purple. I put this in front of you. You know Prabhupada so well, then you tell me what parts of the Nectar of Devotion he didn't write. Just open the book, here's your highlighter, start showing me what he didn't write. You will not make one mark in the book because you don't know. You don't know. But then I can put another book in English in front of you, Bon Maharaj, and you'll see paragraph by paragraph that whole paragraph on a particular page is just the purport of Jīva Goswami or Madhusūdana Goswami or somebody else. It's not even his own words. He's just translating other people's purports, paragraph by paragraph, and every once in a while, in a paragraph or a little paragraph, he will write his own words. And somebody who's closer to ISKCON to ask Damodar Swami. He's done this study. He knows. When Prabhupada said, I'm representing the previous acharyas, he wasn't stretching it. He was saying it exactly. He's translating, and then something of the current. And I can find most of those things, because most of those things are kind of comments for the world or something. Not all of them. I need to make that. And I don't sit around with comparison. When I read the Nectar of Devotion, which is my favorite book of Prabhupada's to read, I just read as he wrote it. That's all he did. And Bhaktivinoda, he writes books, and guess what? He puts somebody else's name on it. Prema Vivarta is written by Jagadananda Pandit. No, it isn't. Written by Bhaktivinoda. You just put Jagadananda's name on it. But it's not a simple matter of me writing the book and then putting Bhaktivinoda's name on it or something. Or putting a Bhrakeshwar Pandit's name on it. It'd be like, what is this? And someone will say, oh, Bhaktivinoda, he also did that. Pen names. It's like, Baba, there's not a pen name. He brought you the bhav of Jagadananda Pandit. That flowed through him. He penned that. Like Prabhupada said, I don't like these books. Kṛṣṇa did. Well, guess what? Kṛṣṇa wrote those books, wrote some parts of those books for other people hundreds of years ago. So Kṛṣṇa's been doing this a long time. And it has to go forward in the same way. That's where the challenge lies. Nothing less. It has to go forward in the same way. Parampara. No one or anything is above the Guru's head except God himself and Kṛṣṇa, and his Guru. Not a voting committee. A committee cannot vote to make Guru. They cannot vote to distribute Guru. They cannot vote. Voting has nothing to do with it. And when the Guru surrenders to the higher authority of, say, a GBC or something like that, then they are ritviks because they represent the higher authority. Now, we were talking to that one devotee the other day, and he boldly came forward and told me how he follows his guru without fail, and all his guru's disciples would do the same, but you haven't passed the litmus test. What is that? Change what you say, ... or get out of ISKCON. And so if your guru leaves, I said, will all his disciples go with him? He said, yes. I said, I doubt that. Because they're indoctrinated by the 5th regular principle, never leave ISKCON. And as soon as a guru looks like whoopee, 2 things are looked at. His zone and his manpower. Not the spiritual necessity of those people. The prestige. You know, ISKCON lost a guru. A guru went to Satyanarayana Haridas Shastri. A ISKCON guru wrote a letter dismissing Prabhupada as a Hindu guru. And that was Astarata from Germany, with over 50 disciples. He wasn't a big ISKCON guru, but he was a brahmachari guru in the 90s in Germany. His name is Astarata. He's a disciple of Prabhupada. He gets converted by Haridas Shastri and Satyanarayan and rejects Prabhupada, categorizing him as a Hindu guru only, writes a letter to the GBC and explains all this, how he wants to learn real Siddhanta and all this stuff, but appreciates Prabhupada for what he did and all this stuff. And you know what happens? It's just like, everybody looking. ISKCON guru converted. He dismisses himself with a letter to the GBC. Mail that letter to me and I'll burn that man in Hades every day for the rest of his life. I'm not going to swallow his rejection of Prabhupada, some statement that Prabhupada's not bona fide, that he doesn't know Siddhanta, all this stuff. When Yati made a comment against Prabhupada, wrote it, Yati was running Yogakit, he's Tirtha Maharaj's disciple. This came in the public in a book. Śrīdhara Mahārāja, he told Sagar, you cannot see this and let this go. Somehow this crossed your eyes. Your guru is being insulted. He's being attacked. You cannot let this go. And Śrīdhara Mahārāja made Sagar write a rebuttal to that against Yati. And it stuck. Yati buttoned his lip. Meanwhile, Astarata dismisses Prabhupada as only a Hindu guru only. And all of our Siddhanta is up to Siddhanta. And all the GBC is worried about is, nobody saw that, did they? Don't let this get out. It's called, what do they call it? Something management, crisis management. Damage control. Damage control. It's like, how can you let that stand? And they're going on. They're not 50 now. They're way growing. There's hundreds. They might be even reaching the thousands in that particular group. They're in Croatia. Lots from Croatia. Totally against Prabhupada. Our Sampradaya is bogus. All the way back to and including Bhaktivinoda. Where is the coming? You know what Prabhupada said? When you get powerful in ISKCON, take the Ballabha Sampradaya to court and sue them and get our deity back. You ask Giriraj Maharaj and he will tell you Prabhupada was adamant. When ISKCON is strong, file a case. Prabhupada's a fighter. He didn't say, make Kalyan mandaps, make Kalyan mandats, print calendars, rake in the cash, sympathy for the cows, rake in the cash. Wage war, he said. Temples are forts. Books are bombs. What are you talking about? War stuff. Now you have to change the vocabulary because of the terrorism around. But Prabhupada was ready for war with Maya. This is not war with Maya. This is glad handing and compromising. Another 50 years of what you see up there tonight at 7 o'clock isn't going to be there. You'll be an old woman. You remember this. Unless there's major changes where you can get the right philosophy and everything based off that. Not just the philosophy, but based on that means how you act. The exchange between devotees. How you deal with problems. Someone has fallen down. Oh, man, they just axe their head off, throw them out. Everyone hates them. The guru, disciples write cruel letters to the guru. It's just like, I don't know. Would you reject Prabhupada because he took tobacco? Well, he took it every day as an old man. He took snuff at 2 o'clock in the morning. I bought it for him here in Moy Bazaar. You still have the last snuff box that Prabhupada had. Then it was transferred to a silver box, and that was in the glass case up there. And those shoes that are in that case, I gave those the last shoes Prabhupada wore. I gave them to him. Anyway, that snuff box, when Krishna Balaram finally became an enemy of ISKCON, he spoke so heavily against that snuff box. He said, this Prabhupada never had a snuff box. Prabhupada is pure. And it's just like, what? Right. Because of your idea of you think what purity is, therefore Prabhupada couldn't have possibly ever took snuff. I mean, we have to remember in the time of Prabhupada he was a chowkidar. He was hired as a chowkidar. And from chowkidar he went to pot washer. From pot washer he went to brahmachari. From brahmachari he went to sannyasi, an independent guru. And he had not even anything. He's a Hindu, Pakka Hindu. He says, I am born in the shadow of Govardhana. And I go, yes. Govardhana, none different than Krishna. Shadow. It's called Maya. But he's like, yeah, you're born in the shadow. And then you're born in Maya, just like the rest of us. Well, it just goes on and on. Getting it back on track for an individual is reasonable. As a group to get on track? As a group? I don't think so. We're not living time. Small adjustment. That's about it. Well, I am a pessimist about it. If you said your movement is going to hurt ISKCON, I'll freeze. I won't move a stitch. But if you tell me what I'm doing is going to hurt ISKCON, I say, no, you don't understand, and I'm not going to stop moving. I'm going to keep doing whatever I'm doing. Which isn't to point out their problems at all. It's to represent, if somebody is interested in, well, what is our Gaudiya Siddhanta on the Jīva? No, you didn't fall from Goloka, you come from the Protesta. That's a big topic. But you find yourself at no point coming from the Leela of Krishna or anybody. Or anybody. And it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. There's zillions of points, little points, important points. When in the Maha Mantra, what is Rama? Oh, these guys would preach all the means for Ramachandra. Well, that's good for the people you're trying to get to chant. But it doesn't mean you're going to Ramachandra. If it does, then the Hari must mean Sita. So now you're chanting the Goloka mantra, and then you're chanting the backsides in Ayodhya mantra, which is above Vaikuntha but below Dwarka. It's not even as high as Dwarka. Krishna and Dwarka is superior to Ram and Ayodhya. We're not chanting Sita Ram, Sita Ram. We're chanting Ram as in Radha Raman, one who gives pleasure to Śrī Rūpānuga, not Ramchandra, not that one. And I have seen back in my time, devotees in Bombay will chant the first part of the mantra, they stand in front of Radha Rasa Bihari, and as they chant the second part of the mantra, they run over in front of the Sita Ram, as if, yeah, we're chanting your name now. You're not chanting Sita Ram. In fact, Prabhupada just laughed and said, actually, that's Gornitai in disguise. We're not preaching some Ayodhya Ram. What is that? Sakya Bhav, a certain type of Madhurya Sakya, this and that, the servitors, whoop, compared to the gopis, whoop, Hanuman and everybody, whoop, way down here, way down here. Why are we chanting that mantra? Guess what? We're not chanting that mantra. So stop telling people we are. It's one thing to believe your own propaganda. You preach to the Hindus, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Ramchandra, Ki Jai. You can say some things like this and encourage the Hindus. It's bad news when you start believing it yourself. Don't believe your own propaganda, because we do propaganda. Prabhupada tells lies sometimes. There's this one tape, he goes, in New York, every businessman is chanting japa. Translation. One businessman, his name was Atreya Rishi, he was chanting japa. Oh, and Gopal Krishna. Otherwise, New York couldn't have cared a fig about the crazy hares out on the street. I'm sure the banks were just trembling about, we're going to establish Varṇāśrama in gold standard. No chance. No chance. So, you know, and I was thinking, I was in South Africa alone, and I passed through New York on my way, and I'm down there completely alone for 3 months. And I'm listening to tapes all day long, and I listen to this tape, Prabhupada says, every businessman in New York now has japa mala. And I go, You know, what? And then I realized, oh, that's Gopal Krishna Traya Rishi. Two become all. And where was he speaking? Right here in Vṛndāvana. Everyone carrying bead to boost up the Brajavasis.